Welcome, everyone, to The Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. I see a bunch of people here in the live chat already. Bethany Jr., Vake, who else? Tim. Don't forget Danielle. Welcome, Danielle and Bella. All sorts of people here already. So, yes, as you all noticed, I was not here yesterday. There really wasn't as much to talk about, but we will be going over some of the things that we didn't talk about yesterday. That part would be the fact that other Ring and Nest cams on the street had the video not available from the time that Nancy disappeared. And why would that be? Well, they're saying whoever did it might have used some sort of signal jammer to prevent that from happening, which is, hey, clever of them. And Ashley Banfield goes over how that actually happens in one of her videos. George, what's shaking? Mac? I actually know Mac's name now. Interesting. Bethany says, my boyfriend is mad at his mom and sister because of his unhealthy eating habits, and he got so mad and went bonkers over it, his blood work came back high for everything. Well, that might be what he's saying, but maybe not true. Like, it might have been his health anyway. He might be using that as an excuse. I'm not sure. But it could be. That could be what it is. I could see how that could elevate blood pressure for the time. But overall, I don't know. Mavs, what's shaking? Okay. Very good there, Remnant. Remnant-like music. But in the first video we're going to go over, it's Brian Etten talking about how he doesn't like it when people make false accusations against people. And we know the people that have received these accusations. He's talking about Dominic Evans. He's talking about Luke Daly. He's talking about Tommaso, right? People say they're guilty without much supporting evidence. And he talks about the problem with that. And I agree. It is a problem. And he goes over an example with someone about someone who did this in the Brian Koberger case. Well, guess what? They just lost a $10 million lawsuit doing it. Now, granted, the average person isn't going to have that problem, but creators that do this, yeah, they might be in for a big problem. But before I begin, make sure you like the video here and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Come say hello to the flock of black sheep in the comments here in the live chat. And also make sure you check out Brian Etten. He's the most trustworthy person in the space to me. Crazy candy, huh? Yeah, true. True indeed, small-minded. True indeed. So let's see here.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. It is now day 35 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. Today is Saturday. I'm obviously still in Tucson, Arizona. I am actually outside the Pima County Sheriff's Office right now. These are all their SWAT trucks. You might remember these from when we went on and saw those raids a couple of weeks ago. In terms of updates on the case, we're still looking into the possible internet outage around the time that Nancy disappeared. We know the FBI is aware of it. They've been asking neighbors about it. They will not officially comment to us about what they've learned, same with the Pima County Sheriff's Office. But there's still a lot happening behind the scenes. I know that, and I'm just trying to stay on top of it all. In this episode, though, I wanted to dive into an issue that I've seen with this case, but also with almost every big case that I've covered recently, and that is when innocent people who are not connected to a crime end up getting dragged through the mud because people on the internet with huge followings think that they've solved the case and think that it's appropriate to call out innocent people for crimes that they did not commit. So I'm going to get into examples of that happening in the Nancy Guthrie case, but I also want to dive into a situation with the Brian Koberger case because it's all connected in a weird way. And you guys might remember there was this TikTok psychic that decided that it was a professor from Idaho who was responsible for the Idaho murders, despite there being absolutely no evidence and it being an insane theory. Well, it turns out the professor took the TikToker to all the way up to federal court, and there was a trial. And this TikToker now has to pay $10 million for essentially slandering this woman. And it just got me thinking because we've seen similar situations unfolding here in Arizona, and it's just so irresponsible that I wanted to do an episode on it. So I'm going to get into all of it in this episode of Brian Anthony Investigates. All right, hey guys, yeah, so I'm at the sheriff's office here in Pima County. And this is an episode, something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, that I was just waiting for sort of the right moment when I had like some time and things weren't really crazy, because this is something that has bothered me for quite some time covering crime. And
I have this same sensitivity that Brian does when people come into the live chat and just say, yep, I guarantee it, Luke Daly did it. I guarantee it, Tommaso did it. I guarantee it, Dominic Evans did it. It's like, no, you don't guarantee anything. You don't know that. You need evidence to say any of those things. So you can say, might be, maybe, but people are like so sure of themselves. Definitely him. Definitely him. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh my God, like I get angry. I'm like, you don't know that. Like I have a sensitive justice, what would you call it? I guess a justice sensitivity where it's like, I need things to be truthful and keeping it real. And if someone does that without evidence, I'm like, oh my goodness, like what the heck is going on here? So I don't like it. I have the same issue that Brian does.
Innocent people or people where there's just no evidence to prove that they are connected to a crime end up somehow getting thrown under the bus online, and these things just take off. They go viral, and when there's nothing really to back it up. And I've kind of just...
Rooster, that's a great way to put it. The BS detector. I have a very sensitive BS detector. That's a good way to put it.
It's like sat back and watched it happen several times. I mean, you think back to like Idaho when I covered Brian Koberger and I was there for months. And throughout that process, I mean, people were accusing Ethan Chapin's frat brothers of being involved and naming them and showing photos. And then there was Hoodie Guy. And I mean, this isn't just, friends chatting at dinner or friends in a small online group just kicking around theories. I mean, obviously people are going to do that, and that's fine. But what bothers me is when it's people with a huge following that literally go viral, and I'm sitting here covering the story, thinking to myself, wait a minute, like there's no evidence that this person is connected. We haven't seen any, facts to support this. And sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe the person is, maybe they aren't. But maybe the person is, maybe they aren't, isn't enough to report something. And I get that like a lot of people who discuss these cases online aren't journalists, and they're just, I think some people lose track that this is like real life and these are real people and real families. And it's almost like a video game to them. And they don't have the same like journalistic standards as people who are, covering these cases for like news organizations or for YouTube. And I'm not trying to call out like YouTubers. I mean, obviously this is my YouTube and I have TikTok and I like YouTube and I like TikTok and I like Twitter. And I'm not like calling out like, hey, the journalists are better that are on TV and that do the, our newspaper journalists.
And I guess this is the other thing, right? People that aren't a creator, they're not really used to as much blowback if they say something out of turn. As creators, we also get sensitive to that too, because if you ever get out of turn, there's a whole slew of people. Once you have any kind of audience, they're ready to pounce. You mess up, they're on you, white on rice, pounce, pounce, pounce. But if you're not that, I think people don't really receive that negative pushback right away. But it can still cause problems, right? It can cause problems in the people's lives that are innocent. In the most extreme examples, the innocent people go to prison. And every so often, you'll hear a story someone that was in prison for 21 years. Oh, turns out they were innocent. Someone they used bad evidence, or the woman who accused them said she made it up. And meanwhile, the guy spends 20 years in prison. So that kind of thing does happen at the extreme ends. But at the not so extreme ends, the more common ends, people's lives get interrupted. And he's going to talk about that a little bit here coming up, and whose life got interrupted.
It's like, I don't think that at all, at all. So that's not what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is it bothers me when I see people who I know, because I'm covering the cases so closely, there's no evidence that they're connected to the crime, being called out. And I've seen behind the scenes what that does to families. And everybody moves on, like with Idaho. But those people, you still Google their names, and these crazy theories are out there, which I'm going to get to the Idaho connection in a second. But just speaking specifically about Nancy Guthrie, there was this New York Times article about Dominic Evans, who is Tommaso's bandmate. Tommaso, of course, is Annie Guthrie's husband. And I've tried to talk to Dominic, and I haven't had much luck. But the New York Times was able to talk to him. And, there were all these theories online that he was somehow connected, despite there being no evidence. And he told the New York Times, I feel like someone's taken my name. I don't know, monetary clickbait to be relevant, entertainment, but there are innocent people that get hurt. And like with him, he is a teacher. So think about like what these theories that get out there, and people posting things about him or someone like him, like what that can do to your career and to your life. According to the New York Times, Dominic's connection to the Guthrie family dates back to 2007. He joined a rock band. It was called Early Black with Tommaso. After responding to a Craigslist ad, this is all according to the New York Times, they started jamming regularly. Dominic mentioned that he was married to the older sister of Savannah Guthrie, that Tommaso had told him that. And he said he met Nancy Guthrie only once in 2011 when he brought his oldest son to hunt for Easter eggs at her home. So that's his sort of connection to Nancy Guthrie. But beyond that, like, no one has seen any evidence that obviously that he's connected to the crime. But these theories went crazy online for a while, to the point where, even if you guys remember back on February 13th, I had the tip, and I was, basically there with the SWAT team when they raided that house, which that person, Luke Daly, still hasn't been arrested. And we don't know if there's no evidence that he's connected either. But what's interesting is that same time, there were a ton of other people over at Dominic's house thinking that his house was going to get raided. And he was apparently like so scared that he didn't sleep at the house that night.
So apparently that night of the SWAT FBI raid, when Luke Daly and his mother and the other person were detained and questioned, apparently people were at Dominic Evans' house. And I guess this is what happens when people speculate, right? And then some people take it to the extreme and actually go to that person because they think, I'm going to beat the scoop, and I'm going to get there as the cameras and the FBI come here, and I'm going to have the perfect lead to post to my channel. I don't know if creators did that or who did that, but apparently it happened.
And there was never any, I've got sources now here. There was never any evidence behind the scenes that they were going to raid Dominic's house, or that he's ever been connected to the crime. So it's just one example of this happening, where a couple of people online with big followings decide to call somebody out who they think is involved, even there's no evidence of it, and it spirals out of control, and then everybody moves on. But the truth is, for these people who are victims of this, like they can't move on. Their name is now out there forever, and these posts live on forever. And again, it's just something that's bothered me because I've seen it happen over and over again. And the example also back with Idaho, which is really what I want to dive into in this episode, is there was this professor who this TikTok psychic from very early on was posting relentlessly about, saying that she was responsible for the murders, even though there was literally no evidence. It was like the craziest theory ever. There was zero evidence that she was at all connected. And this TikToker would not stop doing it. The TikToker's name is Ashley Gillard, and the Idaho professor's name is Rebecca Schofield. And she just kept saying that Rebecca Schofield was responsible and would not give up. And the theory started to catch on with some people that were following this TikToker, even though the theories literally made no sense. And what's interesting, and that's what I wanted to focus this episode on, is this professor fought back, whereas a lot of people don't. They just try to move on with their lives. But this professor fought back and ended up taking this TikToker all the way to federal court, where there was a trial that just ended last week, where a jury ended up awarding the professor a $10 million judgment.
So did you hear this? That woman TikToker, the psychic TikToker, was accusing this professor of being guilty in the Brian Koberger case. I guess she was saying he actually committed the 4 murders. But whatever it was, he took her to court and he just won a $10 million settlement. And you know what? I say good for him. I don't know how much of that money he's going to get, but it's a valuable lesson, especially for creators.
That the TikToker now has to pay. Now, whether she has anywhere, I mean, there's no way she's going to be able to pay that. But I think it just sends a strong message that, there are repercussions for doing this. And a lot of people kind of get away with it. But this is an example where someone decided to fight back, and a federal jury ended up coming back with this $10 million judgment. I'm joined now by Kevin Fixler from the Idaho Statesman. It's good to see you, Kevin. Thank you for coming back on my show. I was super interested in talking to you just because, I've been in Arizona, obviously covering this case here with Nancy.
So apparently the professor was a woman.
Nancy Guthrie, and there's already been, the New York Times has done some reporting, and I've just seen on my own, there's already been a lot of people here sort of, inappropriately called out that have nothing to do with the case. And,
oh my goodness, the people say, I must have internalized misandry because I automatically thought the person accused was going to be a guy. That's what I get, living in the feminist world. I'm internalizing some misandry.
With all the influencers and that kind of thing. And you just finished covering this trial with this TikToker, Ashley Gillard, which it kind of relates to just sort of a bigger picture issue here happening, especially with like true crime coverage. And people will remember, I remembered the basics from this case because I knew that there was a professor from University of Idaho who was suing a TikToker based on just ridiculous claims. Remind me what, and you've covered the trial, so like the ins and outs of it all, but what did she do again? What did this woman do, this TikToker?
So it was a woman in Texas out of Houston, and she had claimed through tarot card readings and her own psychic abilities that she had landed on a history professor, and not only a history professor, but the chair of the department at the University of Idaho, Rebecca Schofield. And she believed that she was responsible for the 4 murders. And this is before Brian Koberger had been arrested, obviously, or a suspect even identified. And so this dates back to...
So for the Game of Thrones fans out there, that woman, the tarot card reader, psychic person, it seems like the gods, or whatever she believes in, led her astray. Sort of like the Red Witch in Game of Thrones. How, what did she say her god was? Whatever it was, though, it misled her. And it told her Stannis Baratheon was going to be the one to take charge and win the Iron Throne. But no, not true at all. And so her god was wrong, or whatever she believed in was wrong.
Late November and into early December, where she was making these allegations, and essentially that Rebecca Schofield had been in a relationship with one of the 4 victims, and that when that relationship ended, and I should note that this woman is married and is heterosexual, but had been in a relationship with one of the female students who passed. And when that relationship ended, that she ordered the murders, the murder of that student, and then these other 3 were killed in the process. Over time, that story evolved, including with the arrest of Brian Koberger, and Ashley Gillard continued to say that through her readings, that they were tied together, that Brian Koberger was involved, or the ex-boyfriend of one of these students was involved. But it continued for not only months, including after Koberger's arrest and even through the plea agreements and his confession, essentially leading to his sentencing. She continued to post over the years that still implicating Rebecca Schofield with no information beyond sort of her intuition. She was found to have defamed the professor more than a year ago. The judge in this federal civil suit said that she had defamed this professor on these 2 counts. And so what this trial was about was the monetary damages, leaving that to a jury to determine.
So apparently this TikTok woman is still clinging to the fact that she thinks she was right. Really? Like, after all that's happened, $10 million lawsuit later, no, I'm right. Brian Koberger's in jail. No, I'm right. Like, come on, man. Get a grip.
So, I mean, as much as we know about the case, like this is just a ridiculous claim. I mean, there's zero information connecting this professor to the murders at all, period. But she just kept posting about it. I mean, she just kept going.
Yeah, I think she really believes this stuff. I think she believes that she truly has psychic abilities. She claims to be claircognizant is the terminology she used. I sat with her for about an hour and a half over a coffee, even before the trial started. So there was jury selection on Monday last week, and then there was a 4-day trial, as I said, to determine monetary damages. And before any of that really got underway, though, I sat with her and I wanted to get to know her a little bit and understand from where she was coming. It was clear to me that she does believe that she has these abilities, and she really didn't walk back the fact that she believed Rebecca Schofield, the professor, was involved in this. In fact, there was kind of I don't know if it was a funny moment, but an interesting moment where she said, "Are you a guilter?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Do you believe that Brian Koberger is guilty?" And that apparently is the terminology that goes around online. And I said, well, if what you mean is, do I believe Brian Koberger confessed to the murders and is now serving 4 consecutive life sentences with no chance of parole and waived all appeal rights in exchange for removing the death penalty, then the answer is yes. I believe all of the evidence pointed to one particular individual. And rather than being somebody who maybe they would put her in the camp, I think most people would, of sort of a conspiracy theorist.
So people are asking in the chat, how do they come up with that term, the amount 10 million? And I would say, I think they were kind of sending a message, and they were saying, hey, any of you creators, especially if you have a following, you do have to be careful what you say. And there are going to be some repercussions, especially if it meets the standards of defamation or slander. So that would be a good case to go over too, how they came up with the criteria, right? So I guess in particular, I would wonder, did she do this lawsuit before or after Brian Koberger was convicted? That's one thing. Because especially if it was after, there's no reason why she should have kept on going. Now before, I don't know. But even to say just the accusations and being sure about it without evidence, that's a problem. I'll be curious the criteria, though, what the check marks were.
She was sort of positioning others as being those who believed in the guilt. She felt Brian Koberger probably did that only to avoid the death penalty. But yeah, I mean, it was a interesting situation to sit with her and learn her perspective, and she believes that she was able to stumble through her abilities and tarot card readings and oracle card readings, for those who knows what those are, but that she had learned information about the case and about the what happened that early morning before police even released it to the public. And so she really leaned on that and saying, look, I got these other issues correct, and highlighted that during the trial to the jury. But of course, as Rebecca Schofield's attorney pointed out at trial with a direct examination of Ashley Gillard on the stand, she said, you have no facts, nor have you ever had any facts to point to Rebecca Schofield as being involved at all.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one thing if you say you're a psychic and you have these beliefs and maybe you like tell your friends or whatever, but it seems really different, obviously, that she was posting over and over again to TikTok, and it became, I mean, I had heard about it. It became somewhat of a thing that this woman was posting this.
So maybe not right now, but soon enough, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check out the court documents from that case to see what the evidence was to truly convict her. I guess convicting isn't the right word, but just so that she's guilty, right, of the lawsuit, and then having to pay out 10 million. She probably doesn't have 10 million to pay, but just to see those checklists, I think that would be very interesting, and it'll be a good thing to go over at a later date.
Does she have any regrets? I mean, what was the final judgment that now she'll have to pay? Is it 10 million?
That's right. So the jury was there to determine monetary damages, and there's two types in a civil defamation suit. There's compensatory damages, which is the route there to compensate, meaning cover all of the medical expenses. Rebecca's.
And yes, we're going to get back to Mrs. Guthrie in a minute. Brian was talking about the case in the beginning, but he kind of veered off into this about false accusations. So we're going to hear him out, and then we're going to get back to Nancy Guthrie.
Schofield and her family had installed, new security mechanisms, including cameras and various things like that. They wanted her to pay for that and for sort of long-term medical care, whether that was physical therapy related to, various almost migraines. I mean, she was having headaches and continues to have them, and other body and nerve problems she was associating or affiliating with, the trauma she had gone through in being accused and almost becoming a pariah in her own community over suspicions of her involvement. And then what you had were punitive damages. And again, the root there related to basically a penalty for having conducted yourself in this sort of way. So the jury awarded $2.5 million in compensatory damages, and then an additional 7.5 in punitive. And that's how we get to that $10 million, which, is Ashley Gillard worth 10 million or more dollars? And I think the answer is absolutely no. So I don't think they landed on this verdict with the idea that much, if any, of that money will ever be awarded or handed over. That's up to attorneys to sort out. But it's really the wrist slap and sending a message, I think, to the rest of America that you cannot do this online and just sully someone's name repeatedly, and after cease and desist letters and request to stop, and landing on a suspect, the lone suspect, and then moving through the judicial process and the adjudication, and ultimately someone confessing and then being sentenced. I mean, you cannot continue on and on and on to go after someone with, again, no provable facts.
So did the professor try to make her stop? Because, she went all the way to a federal jury trial is a pretty big deal, but did she do a lot of things before that to try and just get her to stop?
Yeah, so she learned about this, and she told the whole story from the stand, talking about what she had experienced, and explained that they sent a cease and desist letter shortly after Thanksgiving and trying to get this TikToker to stop. Basically, you have no information. This is incorrect. We assert you must give up on this. And she didn't. And I believe they sent that by email, and that was ignored. And then they had proof that she had received the second cease and desist because they sent it to her actual address. And then Ashley Gillard then actually took that cease and desist and sort of made light of it in future videos. And so they obviously.
So this is a big part of her guilt then, right? She got this cease and desist, and she got multiple ones of them. And the ones she did get, she made light of it in her videos, which proved that she got it. So I think that was a big part in her being getting guilt. And her guilt in this case was her making light of the cease and desist. So cue to all the other social media creators out there, you get a cease and desist, especially if it's been like the person you're trying to say is guilty is cleared, or whatever the infraction is. Let it go.
Obviously knew that she had received it. She had put it in one video on a toilet paper roll, basically suggesting that's what she thought of it and how she might treat it. You can use your own imagination there. That was played in court, by the way. So I think.
So it sounds like this woman was pretty arrogant. And there's a saying that comes to mind: those who are not humble will soon be humiliated. And I think that applies to her.
That won some points with what ultimately was a 7-member jury who had to be unanimous in their decision. So they made those attempts through, I would call those legal means. And then I believe it was on December 21st of 2022, shortly before Brian Koberger was arrested on the 30th, that they filed a formal defamation case in civil court and in federal court. And this played out for years. I mean, as we saw, it outlasted the actual criminal case for Brian Koberger and was only just resolved this past Friday.
And so her defense was that she actually thinks this is true still? Is that what you said?
Yeah, she pointed to certain facts that she asserted she got right beforehand, could point to videos and, tarot card readings had shown that what was being put out by police and the public, which was, as you recall, pretty limited in the early days, about whether or not the two surviving roommates in the house were awake or asleep. And she pointed out, hey, that was a detail I got right, that they actually were up. And we have obviously over time learned that that is the case, that the two surviving roommates were up for certain periods of time, had heard various things. One of them, Dylan Mortensen, had come almost face to face with Brian Koberger, feet from her door before she closed it and locked it, and then ended up down in the first floor roommate Bethany's her room. So she pointed to those things. She pointed to the fact that she believed herself to be claircognizant, that her intentions were to advocate on behalf of the victims to ensure that justice was done, that this was not malicious.
So it sounds like this woman was narcissistic. Narcissistic is an adjective. Or she had some hubris that was, she refused to concede. She refused to admit, all right, maybe I got this one wrong. And then she thought she was above the rule of law. Okay, I got a cease and desist. I'm not going to stop. So there's some arrogance there as well. That's what it sounds like to me.
That she had no intent of going after the professor specifically, but just that she wanted to put information out into the public. That was the first thing. The other thing that she showed the jury is that she actually did file a tip to the FBI tip line and asking that they investigate. There was this really interesting moment at the trial where Wendy Olson, who was the attorney for Rebecca Schofield, and Wendy Olson is a former presidentially appointed U.S. attorney for the state of Idaho. That was during the Obama administration. So, a heavy hitter here. She was at the podium and direct examining Ashley Gillard, sort of in this adversarial role, and saying, you have absolutely no proof, nor have you ever had any facts. And they had this sort of debate about whether or not that was what she needed in order to make these allegations. And Ashley Gillard's response was, psychics don't use facts, they use intuition. And then that was supposed to be part of her defense, that, I had the best of intentions here, even if I was wrong, that she could be wrong, but this is what she was getting back in her readings.
It's like they always say, the path to hell was paved with good intentions.
And repeat readings, by the way. She told me when I sat down with her that, she had done dozens of these readings before she ever went public and went on TikTok with these accusations.
Did she show any remorse for what she did to this professor's life?
My sense was she didn't really understand it. Her defense was often that I didn't do anything to her. And I think she made that point in her closing remarks, or at least attempted to with the jury. She was saying, look, she's pointing to physical and mental health damage that I have done to her, seeking monetary damages in response. But according to medical guidelines, you cannot acquire post-traumatic stress syndrome directly from a video. You cannot watch something online and then get PTSD, which she has been diagnosed by her therapist with. And so Ashley Gillard, who told me that as a combat veteran herself, I've not been able to independently verify that, but my understanding is she served for 4 years in the U.S. Army, she told me this, so I'm sharing this with the public, that she had been in an IED explosion of a tank she was on in Iraq, and so had actually been diagnosed herself with PTSD. So she had this interesting familiarity with this mental health issue, and so she challenged Schofield's therapist specifically about her own diagnosis, and she went through the medical guidelines step by step and said, so she doesn't qualify here, correct? That's right. She doesn't qualify here, correct? She doesn't qualify. And so they had this lengthy back and forth that really got uncomfortable, and I think I could even sense in the jury it was difficult to watch. It was highly uncomfortable, and it was until Ashley Gillard sort of got the responses she needed to sort of secure the win, if you want to call it that. I'll put that in air quotes, I guess, the win that this therapist was acknowledging.
So I caught wind of how many likes I have, and I almost died. So please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl, and Swift the Fox, and for the flock of black sheep in the live chat, of course. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I go live around 10 p.m. Eastern every night. Talk about true crime and current events. And I use my experience with mental health, addiction, being on the spectrum, autistic spectrum, and my experience with narcissistic abuse and narcissistic family systems to give my own unique insight into true crime and current events. And welcome. Also, super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Memberships are a great way to support the channel, and so are super stickers.
She did not meet the medical guidelines that were being presented to her, but she said, but, based on my 32 years of experience as a mental health counselor, I am diagnosing her with this. She absolutely fits the criteria. And so that became sort of something that the jury had to figure through in order to determine whether or not there was direct correlation between the impacts of what Ashley Gillard had put out on TikTok repeatedly and other social media forums, including to YouTube eventually, and what the real damage was to Rebecca Schofield and her family, by the way. I mean, they corroborated her story and were cross-examined. And I will actually note, Brian, I mean, this was such a unique case because Ashley Gillard chose to represent herself at trial, pro se, many know that as. It created these very uncomfortable moments where the very first time that Rebecca Schofield and Ashley Gillard had...
Oh. Improve yourself. I always love your username, Improve Yourself. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I always appreciate your support. You are the best.
Ever talked was when Ashley Gillard was cross-examining Rebecca Schofield on the stand. So that was the communication. And then later that led to her also cross-examining Schofield's best friend, Schofield's therapist, Schofield's husband, Schofield's mother. And there were these really heated moments that were incredibly uncomfortable. I've never seen anything like it. And I don't know if you have either.
Yeah. So she was literally, she didn't have a lawyer, and she was literally the one doing the questioning of these victims, of her victims, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, again, purported, but I think the jury... But the other thing that was really interesting was then she had to, because she didn't have another person representing her, and she also didn't have any witnesses except for herself. She then had to both cross-examine herself sort of on the rebuttal phase of Schofield's attorney direct examining her. And then when Ashley Gillard put on her own case, she called herself to the stand and basically did the same thing in this very odd Q&A format that the judge made a point to say. He took, he said aside to the jury, like, I know this will seem very bizarre. It's not unique in a case like this under these types of circumstances. Don't hold it against the defendant, who had to basically say, question, is your name Ashley Gillard? Answer, yes, my name is Ashley Gillard. It was
so
again,
bizarre.
Very bizarre. Yeah, it was very strange. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know that I ever will again.
Has there ever been a case like this? Do you know?
A defamation case related to...
Yeah, related to a TikToker and, a big crime story.
I mean, my coverage primarily focuses on Idaho, as you know.
Yeah.
There has to be precedent for something like this. And I know that's sort of your larger question about sort of the scope and the precedent this may set across the national landscape. I think this sets the tone and also, sends the message I mentioned as, the jury verdict on this. An extreme amount of money that she's been ordered to pay. I do hear she plans to appeal. She did tell me that directly. So I guess we'll see where things wind up. But I'm not familiar with another case like this. Certainly there are defamation cases that have resulted in large amounts of money. In fact, actually, Schofield's attorney, Wendy Olson, I mentioned she has quite a career background. She represented a drag dancer out of North Idaho who had been accused of various things that were untrue in a defamation case, and also won quite a bit of money. I think it was $1.1 million. I think that was 2 years ago here in Idaho, but that's completely different and not really, I think there were some social media elements to that, but not like this. The Moscow murders, as we both know, was such a high profile case, and for these accusations to go on and on and on I've never heard of anything quite like this.
Yeah, and it wasn't just her. I mean, there were a lot of TikTokers with big followings that were calling people out. I remember some of like the frat guys, hoodie guy. I mean, people really had their names drugged through the mud. Um, and and I'm seeing it happen again now with the Nancy Guthrie case. There was that New York Times article about the bandmate, and there's been other people too. I mean, I just interviewed one of the people who've been detained who were never arrested. You know, everybody now is trying to say that they were involved when there's really no evidence of that. I mean, do you think this case could send a message out that this is not okay? I mean, $10 million is a pretty, it's a big number.
It's a huge number. I don't know if it's unprecedented in Idaho. We have seen with Ammon Bundy, who's kind of a right-wing type, who ended up in a different type of civil suit in order to pay $52.5 million for damages to a local hospital group. But that's kind of, unrelated. I think with regards to defamation, if it didn't set a record, and in Idaho in particular, it has to be close. And I do think that I follow social media,
I mean, and it's good to know also, this was very avoidable for Ashley. All she had to do was obey the cease and desist. I mean, you get a cease and desist. Now they're serious. And they even sent multiple. She even sent multiple cease and desists, and she ignored them both. So that was the warning.
Post things like that. And I'm seeing in the conversations around the stories that I wrote related to this 1-week trial last week that many are sort of hashtagging or atting various people who have been involved or accused of engaging in defamation about things like the Charlie Kirk shooting and maybe the Guthrie case here that you're on. I think we're starting to see that there is a belief that there's sort of, a path that if it wasn't known before, that this definitely lets them know that these are things you can pursue. I will say, I think what's interesting when we've seen sort of this collision of, the online sleuth world and, even if it's best of intentions to help law enforcement solve a case, I think we're seeing that sort of in the face of, libel law, slander spoken, and people trying to figure these things out and help direct law enforcement. But, as journalists, we know that we can't just report something without attribution or citing court records or, a law enforcement source said that this person is a person of interest or a suspect or, and even then we have to be very careful with the words. We can't say that Brian Koberger murdered 4 students. We have to say that during his arrest, that he was arrested on, he was suspected of it. So I think we're seeing this sort of, the unprofessional side of that world, just for lack of training. I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but I think it is the training that we receive as journalists, and we have editors and producers and people who make sure to double check our work to ensure that we're not creating defamation and libel potential in the things we write and say that get published. And on social media, those layers, they sort of are eliminated. We're all in media, but they're on social media versus more traditional media, and they sort of run these risks. The last thing I'll say about this is, outside of Ashley Gillard, who puts her name and face on her accounts, I think we see a lot of these accusations and suspicions that get bandied about online, but a lot of it's done by people who are anonymous. And if there was a mistake made here by Ashley Gillard, it's that she didn't hide her name or face, maybe to her credit that she really believed these things, but they were obviously defamatory. A judge ruled they were defamatory.
Now that's something I do wonder. If someone's a faceless YouTube channel, can that person not receive a cease and desist? So there's all sorts of faceless YouTube channels, right? HD Tutor, Too Lazy to Try, Podcast Cringe. So they're anonymous. Now, does that make those counts above defamation, slander, etc.? You would think no, right? But who would you sue if you don't know who they are? Like, what's YouTube's policy of an anonymous channel? You don't know their name. Are they required to give them the lawsuit through their email or something? I don't know. I don't know the answers to this, but has anyone seen that happen? Have you ever seen a faceless YouTube channel get a cease and desist? or sued for defamation or slander or libel?
The law in Idaho and under federal court guidelines, and she's paying a huge price as a result.
And the thing is, these things live on forever on the internet. Like, even if, hopefully there'll be an arrest in the Nancy Guthrie case. There was an arrest and a, conviction in the Brian Koberger case, he admitted to it. But still, if you Google these people, these things come up, and it sort of just lives out there forever. And it's really unfair.
That was actually Schofield, or excuse me, Rebecca Schofield's perspective too. I mean, this has damaged her career. This has hurt her potential to kind of in that publisher perish demands of academia and upward mobility and growth of her career, and with her reputation with her colleagues. And she's Harvard educated, has a master's and PhD, and has worked her whole life toward that goal. And her family has made grave sacrifices for that purpose, for her career, and that she was damaged irreversibly. And anytime, I mean, here we are, we're still even talking about it. Rebecca Schofield, her name will always be attached to this. And that was the point they were trying to make. They had an expert in PR and a background in journalism who actually had taught at the University of Idaho and was retired, who pointed out it takes 25 to 40 years for something like this to shake from someone's reputation and their name. And we know in the internet age that you say the wrong thing on TV, or the wrong thing gets attached to you forever. It never goes away. And I mean, I just saw the headline today that Justin Timberlake is suing to prevent the release of video of his DWI, that this will damage his career forever. And it's interesting because that's a public document, and we all know what the allegation is tied to that case. But
that's interesting. So Justin Timberlake is trying to sue so that his DUI body cam footage or whatever it is doesn't get out. I don't think he has much of a case for that. But what do you think? Do you think Justin Timberlake has a case for that? So he doesn't want his the footage of his DUI arrest out. Does he have a case? I mean, press 1 if you think he does. Press 2 if you don't think so.
He says, if this thing gets out, this will damage me forever. So even he's quite aware that people will associate him with that forever. And we think about the Mark Sanchez case, the former NFL player who was alleged to have stabbed this trucker in some sort of incident while he was under suspicion of being on drugs. And that's the allegations. I mean, this has tarnished his life and his career forever. I think he was fired from his commentating job, and he's just trying to recover so he can avoid the legal ramifications. I mean, these things stay with people forever, particularly if you're a celebrity or if someone spotlights you as potentially involved in something you weren't, and sort of builds this, if it's not fame, it's sort of infamy attached to who you are forever.
Do you know, was Gillard's TikTok, I don't know if it came out in the case, was it monetized?
So everyone thinks Justin Timberlake does not have a case, and I agree with him. Now, this is a good question Brian's asking here about Ashley's TikTok. Was it monetized? Let's see the answer.
Is this something she was making money off of?
So Wendy Olson asked her that specifically, whether or not she had made earnings on her TikTok account, which, by the way, I should add, her account was banned in July of 2023. So she does have a new account on TikTok with many fewer followers and much less, noteworthiness, I guess I would say. People are still sort of following it to see what she'll say next. And she has been on, but she said on the stand, so under oath, that she said she never made any money off of this. I did actually put it out to the public through, I'll call it X. I know many know it is Twitter still, but I asked people, I said, well, I'm not on TikTok. I guess I'm a viewer of it in some regards when I need to for work purposes, but I'm trying to understand, like, can you monetize? Can you make money? And it seemed to me people were saying if you sort of corner the market on, both a following and going live, there are potential benefits financially. But Ashley Gillard said she never made any money on it. And I think that surprised Wendy Olson, because I think she was thinking, hey, we're going after sort of the proceeds you received to some extent. And then to be told, again, under oath on the stand, like, well, I never made any money on this. So
yeah, just because it seems to me like people who have crazy theories about cases and name people, it's almost like the crazier the theory, the more clicks you'll get, versus just sticking to the facts and the truth and being patient and waiting to see how things play out. So that's why I was wondering, just because that seems to be an issue that I see. And it almost gets rewarded to a certain extent. Like you'll get more clicks if you're like, you have the craziest idea of what happened and you name somebody that no one else is, and people will be interested in click, but you're really just like ruining that person's life essentially.
Yeah, and Schofield's attorneys pointed out that Ashley Gillard was hashtagging all future videos that she made in this lineup, this series of videos, that more than 100 videos, that she would hashtag it with Rebecca Schofield. Ashley Gillard's perspective was, and her assertion was, well, I only made a handful of videos about Rebecca Schofield. They were about solving this crime. She had branded herself as this psychic who does tarot and oracle card readings to help solve mysterious murders and crimes.
But she kept hashtagging them all with her name.
Yeah, I didn't verify that, to be clear, but this was the assertion in court, so I trust it's true, but that was part of it. And so, Schofield's attorneys said, well, I mean, these were all about Rebecca Schofield, and Gillard's response was, well, no, they weren't. I only made, a dozen or more that were specifically about Rebecca Schofield. But I think by continuing to hashtag it, especially with hashtags, probably Idaho 4, Brian Kohberger, these types of things, Moscow murders, I think it obviously drew the direct correlation, and people continue to digest this information, according to Schofield's attorneys, millions of times.
I wonder if it's like almost criminal in a sense, like almost like stalking, when you just won't let something go and you're calling someone out like that publicly,
Yeah, I mean, I
guess it's not really stalking, but I don't know, it's terrible.
Well, this became part of Ashley Gillard's defense. She said, I never threatened you directly. You have no proof. You have no video footage of me actually making a physical threat toward you. It never happened. She tried to say these things were all in your mind. And I mean, mental health, it got into this, again, this damages issue of like, well, what was the physical threat versus the mental health threat? Was this something you created in your own mind? And these were questions she was posing to, as I said, Schofield's husband, Schofield's therapist, Schofield's mother. And it got very contentious and heated at points. And it was very surreal to see I mean, they say in court, right? And this is more about criminal stuff, but the opportunity to face your accuser. And in this civil case, I mean, that was literally what happened. They, for the very first time ever connected in this case, I mean, they were sitting next to each other, or not far apart, just before jury selection when I walked in. And I was like, well, that's clearly Ashley Gillard. And, standing next to her is Wendy Olson, the attorney for Rebecca Schofield, who was seated just, right next door. I mean, it was, like I said, surreal is the best way I can describe it. It was very bizarre.
Yeah, what a bizarre case. Well, like I said, I just personally hope it sends a message, just with all the true crime stuff that I've sort of witnessed happen. Thank you so much, Kevin, for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, and just to let people know, I know that the criminal case in Kohberger and the Moscow murders is resolved. I mean, that happened in July of 23. July 23rd of 2025 now. But I continue to monitor this case. I've got some good stories coming up. Not anything I can totally share about right now, and I've got a longer term project as well. So that's something I hope to talk to your audience and others more about down the road. But I continue to track this case and all sort of, these tendrils, just like this case, that were left unresolved, and still interesting to our Idaho audience, and certainly sure, I think to our national audience. I saw there was a ton of interest in this case, and I think I was the only one covering it gavel to gavel. So I look forward to sharing more in the future.
Yeah, you're the man. Everybody else moves on, but then you'll have the scoop. So, all right,
I'm still here.
Kevin. Yeah, you're still there. Thank you.
All right, man.
I appreciate Kevin for taking the time to talk with me. Kevin is become a friend of mine because we obviously covered the Idaho murders together. He's with the Idaho Statesman. And so we, got to know each other pretty well, just covering everything that has to do with Brian Kohberger. So I thought it would just be interesting to dive into what happened with that trial in Boise. Just to me, it all feels so relevant in light of everything happening with Nancy Guthrie on social media. And again, I just want to say, like, I'm not calling out just like internet sleuths in general. I have a ton of friends who consider themselves internet sleuths, and I'm not calling out TikTokers. I love TikTok. I have TikTok. And I'm not calling out YouTubers. I have YouTube. And there's like so much great content and so many people who genuinely care about these stories and work really, really hard. And I don't just think like traditional media is are the responsible ones. In fact, many times they're not. So that's not the point I'm trying to make. I guess the point I wanted to make with this episode, though, is like, before you start sharing these photos of people where there's no real evidence connecting them to a crime, just think about it, because you really have an impact on their life forever. You have an impact on their kids' lives. And it's one thing if you're, with your friends, just kind of like chatting about a case and throwing around ideas or whatever. But it's another thing to start posting about it and really dragging these people through the mud, when in the end, most of the time, they end up having nothing to do with the case. So that's about it. Hopefully I didn't sound too preachy, because I'm really not trying to sound preachy at all. It's something that's kind of been like weighing on me for a while. And
yeah, I mean, before anyone makes accusations, you really got to ask yourself, am I making this accusation from a place of evidence, or am I just speculating and I'm going to act like my speculation is fact? People have to choose their words carefully, especially when there's negative consequences for other people. And I think that's something that people might forget in the online social media era, but it is true. We all should be careful. Be mindful of our words, because once they're spoken, they can only be apologized for, never taken back.
then this TikTok verdict in Idaho, I just thought was really interesting when you kind of connect it back to everything that's been happening. So I appreciate you guys so much for following along. Again, day 35, I'll stay on top of everything. And hopefully we'll get some kind of answer soon with what happened to Nancy Guthrie. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
All right. So now we're going to go to Ashley Banfield. But please remember to like the video. I have a feeling we're dangerously low on likes, but likes are free. Likes help the channel immensely, and therefore my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl. And come in and say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
There are pieces of technology.
So this video is going to be about why some of the Ring and Nest Cam footage of the neighbors wasn't available. And we're going to go over why that happened and what kind of systems that can happen with.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm Ashley Banfield. This is Drop Dead Serious. Thank you for being here. It's Friday. We made it through another week. Subscribe. It is really kind, and I love you for it. And there's a cute little thing down there that's adorable. So, easy to do. Doesn't cost a thing. And it's really a nice little solid that you're doing me. Hey, so look, I know that you're probably starting to feel a little hopeless about the Nancy Guthrie case, because what are we, day 34? I'm recording this on March 6th. And don't feel that way. Everybody who says, oh, the case is cold, it isn't cold, duh. Okay, it isn't cold. Trust me. A cold case is when you've exhausted all the leads, and then you pack up all the evidence and you put it on a shelf and you say, gee, I hope we get back to that one day, and let's move on to other stuff. This is not that. There's a whole task force assigned to this, 5 people from the sheriff's department and then the FBI, and they're working out of the FBI's actual not headquarters, but their field office in Tucson. So they're there on the ground in the place where this happened.
Yeah, so this isn't officially cold yet at all. However, I think people would be fooling themselves if they think it's not headed in that direction, unless something drastic changes soon. I mean, I don't know how long the FBI is going to have their task force and the 4 deputies and the 1 sergeant from local law enforcement. How long they're going to have them on there, especially if there's no results. I mean, think about that for a second. How long do you think? A month? 3 months? 6 months? A year? I don't know. I kind of have a hard time thinking much more than 3 months from now, maximum, unless something happens between now and then.
It's not cold. Is it chilling? Yeah, it's getting a little cooler. And we already heard from the sheriff that the tips are going down too. But today, yeah, it was interesting. Today was interesting because, and I don't know why we didn't know this on day 2, 3, 4, or 6, or 8, But here we are, day 34, and we're learning it. So yesterday, if you were watching, you saw pictures of FBI agents from the Violent Crime Task Force, several of them walking through Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood and knocking on neighbors' doors and asking a whole new round of questions. Okay, I'm in. I am down for this because sometimes it's fresh eyes. Sometimes it's we got something else and we're running down a lead. And so now we need to go ask questions about the new thing that we just got from the thing. And so some of the neighbors didn't want to tell reporters what it was the agents were knocking on their door for, but some did. And several of the reports came back to people like, Michael Ruiz, who's still with Fox News and stayed there, and Brian Enton, who's with News Nation and stayed there, and their producers. I mean, they're still working hard, even though the media got chased out by the sheriff who made them park in, Phoenix and walk the desert to get to Nancy's home. Didn't work. So what the reports were that came back from the neighbors was that the agents were asking about what seems like a neighborhood-wide outage, Wi-Fi, internet outage, right around the time that Nancy went missing on February 1st around 1, 2 in the morning.
So an internet outage between 1, 2 in the morning. You should probably say 1 and around 2:30-ish, because that's when it happened.
Multiple people said they had an outage at that time. I mean, does that sound like a coincidence? Maybe. But I have some extraordinary intelligence on all of this. And the notion of a Wi-Fi jammer maybe doing this, wreaking havoc in the neighborhood, it isn't what you think. And Wi-Fi jammers don't do necessarily what you think. They can do some things. But the guy that I'm about to talk to is one of the best in the business when anything starts to make my eyes glaze over when it comes to digital forensics and technology. Jake Green is the guy I call. And he had the receipts and the answers. He had it all. And he's really, really schooled me on what might have happened at Nancy's front door, given the certain pieces of evidence that we know about, notwithstanding the stuff we don't know about. But damn, he's good. And he weighed in on the thing that was in the bad guy's pocket, on the suspect's pocket. Because we've all wondered, is it the edge of an iPhone? Is it a walkie-talkie? Is it a Wi-Fi jammer? Well, somebody with the kind of digital forensics background that Jake Green has, he has an idea. And it's a very intelligent look at this. And you're going to hear that in just a minute. Don't go away until you hear that. It's super interesting.
Yeah. Hit that like button faster than Sheriff Nanos opened up the crime scene.
Also, he has weighed in on the times in the timeline that we got from the sheriff. You remember 1:47 a.m., camera's disconnected, but 2:12 a.m., person appears on the camera, and we're all like, wait, what now? How does that work? If it's disconnected, how does a person appear? Well, he's got what might be the most logical answer that I've heard so far. And it is, I don't know how I didn't think of it, but I don't think like he does. And so let me just give you a bit of a feel for the day. Brian Enton said that the FBI is looking into this possible internet outage during the time that Nancy Guthrie went missing. One neighbor told Brian Enton that his Ring camera history is mysteriously not available on the night that Nancy disappeared. And then Brian had these pictures from one of the neighbors of their Ring cams, and you can see that they look like they're hardwired. So many people had questions about that. Well, if it's hardwired, why would? Well, you're going to hear why that matters and doesn't matter in just a moment. But he said something else that was super interesting. Brian Enton reported that the neighbor he talked to said that the cameras stopped working around the time that Nancy disappeared, but also that his dog woke up and needed to go outside at that exact same time, and that is very unusual for that dog. I know when that's unusual. Atlas, God rest his adorable soul, I miss him so much. He almost never would wake up in the middle of the night and, huff and puff at my face. He would literally come up to my bedside where I was sleeping and go, pff, pff. Never more than that, but that was enough.
I should do a little contest to see who come up with the best slogan for likes, like faster than Sheriff Nanos opened up the crime scene. Animal said one that I already forget. What did she say? Faster than FBI drop gloves. So there should be a contest to see who comes up with the best one each day. I like the sounds of that.
And, want to go outside. Only if he was sick. right? So I get it. If you're a dog owner, if you know, you know. Your dog has habits and patterns. And this guy said, dog woke up right around the same time, wanted to go outside, that it was very unusual. So my spidey senses are going. Anyway, as for an entire neighborhood, and by the way, when I say neighborhood, I don't mean, miles. I mean, the reporting is just Nancy's immediate neighbors, just within the street area, right? Not all the streets, not the parking restriction. Ugh. Nanos. So that is interesting that it's kind of targeted to this area. So of course my questions are, well, I'm a digital idiot, but can you just go bing, 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 bing and shut them all off so that nobody catches my car going in and out? Or can I just go bing at the head of the neighborhood to whatever devices they have in the neighborhood, for internet? Well, I'm an idiot. Jake is not. Jake will tell you exactly what might or might not have happened in a second. And then I got this from Matt Coulson, who's with Arizona Family. They've been doing some really good reporting. If you haven't heard, I usually have to explain this very strange brand. Arizona Family is a brand name of a corporation that owns 2 television stations in Phoenix. And their reporters have been doing really, really good work. Mac has done good work. Brianna Whitney's done great work. Mac reported this. Sheriff Nano says he is not aware of any other search warrants that have been served for any other persons of interest in the Nancy Guthrie case, besides the one in the Rio Rico case, February 10th, and the one connected to Luke Daly's home and car, February 13th. Okay, 2 things. Are you effing kidding me? Come on. Come the F on. You must have had a search warrant for lots of stuff, right? Experts have even weighed in saying, what about just Nancy's history for the last month? You should have been going through all of that, search warrant for all of that detail to find out who she's been talking with, dealing with, fighting with, arguing with, whatever. Like those should have been warrants. Maybe he misspoke. Maybe he misspoke when he said, search warrants. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I can't read this guy anymore. But it does back up what I heard from my source and reported just a couple of days ago. And that is that there are very few leads that are enough to even reach the bar of getting a warrant, right? Probable cause. So now that the sheriff...
And honestly, I thought all of the people that were even detained, I question how credible and quality those leads even were too. Because I thought whatever federal judge signed off on them, I thought to myself, it would have to be pretty weak, considering the gravity of this case and all the eyeballs on it, for that federal judge to say no. So I wonder what the credible evidence was for Carlos, for Luke Daly, his mother, etc. We still don't know. We still don't know what the answer to that is.
For saying that to Matt Coulson, it backs up the reporting from my source the other day, that they don't have even enough right now to get probable cause for a warrant. And the other piece of reporting was, don't expect any of those raids anytime soon, the ones that we saw. Yeesh. Quick note from my sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Wild Grain. And if you love really good... Then I learned something else on the Twitter, on the X. And I don't usually just, grab something from X and throw it up here, but I did some research on what I saw, checked it out, and it actually checks out. Just something to consider here. So February 1st, it was the crime, was the time of the crime. And everyone's been wondering, was this a robbery, a burglary that went bad, and etc. And somebody posted that the Maine 2026 Tucson Gem, Mineral, and Fossil Showcase, basically the gem show, happened in Tucson between January 28th and February 15th. It showcases it is the largest event of its kind in the world, featuring more than 40 venues and over 2,000 vendors across the city. So Jan 28th to February 15th, that is right at the time that Nancy Guthrie is taken. And what this means is that the Tucson area was ripe with places that had lots of valuables elsewhere, right? Gems all over the city. This is the largest event of its kind in the world, this Tucson Gem Show. So I can't really see that this is a rich environment to target Nancy Guthrie's home when everywhere else in Tucson, 2,000 vendors across the city, 40 venues would be a hell of a lot better if that's what you were after, if you were after valuables. It's just something to consider. I'm only saying that, learning about this, it's just another piece of the puzzle. Is it SAT-G, right? South American gang network that targets high-end residences. Well, why would you when the gems are everywhere else? Yeah. So it's just something to consider in the piece of who did this and why. What was the motive? What was the reason? And who could have done this? So to that end, I want you to hear this great interview. Great. Doesn't even do it justice. This spectacular interview with Jake Green. Every time I talk to him, I learn something. I learn a lot. And he talks to me like I'm 5, which I love, because I'm not really good at digital forensics. And I wanted to know everything about how a signal jammer, Wi-Fi jammer might work, and how it might or might not affect the neighborhood, given this latest news that we're learning about all these neighbors saying right around the time that Nancy disappeared, they lost Wi-Fi. So today I called Jake Green, who's just smarter than me in a million different ways. Jake Green's technical intro is that he is a tech operations manager for Invista Forensics, but basically he's a digital forensics guru. And he breaks down some of the most complicated technology for people like me so that I can understand. And when I heard about this neighborhood outage and the possibility that Wi-Fi jammers might be at play, I asked him everything from A to Z about the possibilities here, and he had answers from A to Z. Have a listen. So tell me about these signal jammers and what they can do.
Signal jammers is what they're called. But while you're here, please remember to like this video faster than you click on a video with Maureen in the thumbnail.
So signal jammers is really a misconstrued or misconceptualized device. There are things that if you went on Amazon right now, you can buy one. So they are illegal to use in nefarious ways, but you can still buy and possess them. So when we look at whether it's a jammer or a signal interrupter or a Wi-Fi deauthentication device, there are many different words, but really what it boils down to is these Wi-Fi connections can be disrupted, especially on older devices. If you've ever set one up, I set up my Ring camera, and being a nerd, like I pride myself in being good at setting up devices. Our Ring camera was a nightmare to install because it operates on such an old version of Wi-Fi technology. It's called 2.4 gigahertz. That network is old. We've since moved on to 5 gigahertz networks that are typically shorter ranges but higher signal strength. But when we operate at such a low limit, they can drop very easily. So these Wi-Fi disruptions can occur because of what's called a deauthentication attack. Now, that doesn't speak to what could be like kind of a neighborhood-wide IT outage, but there are pieces of technology on the market right now that if we went and purchased one and put some thought and effort into it, we could absolutely walk up to a house and knock its Wi-Fi offline.
From what I understand, they are fairly low tech, but what does that mean?
So the signal jammers can apparently take something offline that is run on Wi-Fi. So something to pay attention to. But I'm curious more of how this works here.
I think when we think of what is low tech and nowadays is low tech means something that we can go watch a YouTube video about how to set up or read a couple blog posts. So it's not something that requires you to be a high level government spy. It's something that we could do in an afternoon. If we had the parts sitting with us right here, we could actually go through, set up a Wi-Fi disruption, and knock our local Wi-Fi offline.
You and I are different. For you, it would be an afternoon. For me, and this is key because I look at this guy approaching the house on the doorbell cam, and I think he's a buffoon. Given that there are differences between your technical savvy and my technical savvy.
And I would say to Ashley here, so many of the people in law enforcement too, they're calling the guy a buffoon, a clown. It's like, well, this buffoon and or clown has evaded law enforcement 35 days and counting. So what does that say about law enforcement if they can't catch the buffoon/clown? So I'll be careful belittling the person, especially if you haven't caught him yet. Because what does that say about you?
How difficult are these things to use?
So I think going back to him being the buffoon is a part of me. When I first saw the video, I agree. Like something just doesn't, it appears off. Now, when he starts ripping plants out, trying to cover up the camera, like if he's got a Wi-Fi disruptor in his pocket, is he not trusting of that device? Does he think that the Wi-Fi could still be on and that camera still operational? So something is definitely going on. This could be somebody that was put up to do this, somebody who's not very tech savvy. But these the Wi-Fi disruption devices, again, they're very easy. You could go watch a YouTube video right now about how to do it. The link that I sent your producers, that one, there is a YouTube link that goes to it that has since been removed. And perhaps it was removed because it is a nefarious act or could be potentially illegal. But in our country, the FCC does regulate what can and can't be used. So when you think of what is illegal, ham radios can be illegal. So high frequency use of those devices is illegal unless you are licensed to do it. So just because we have this device sitting on a table, until we use it for that illegal step, you can absolutely possess it.
So let's talk about the efficacy, because from what I understand, and again, a lot less than you got to be really close to the home or to the actual system in order to disrupt it, which means you're kind of already caught on the camera if you got to get that close.
That's right. So it really depends on where that Wi-Fi unit is established inside the house. And keeping in mind that the front of this house, we saw that brick facade. Wi-Fi does not play well with thick devices like concrete or brick. So we may already have a weak signal to begin with. And just based on some of the pictures that we've seen, it does look like this is an older Wi-Fi unit, an older Ring doorbell. So the signal strength on those is not nearly as good as the ones that if we bought a brand new unit today.
Wait, you can tell that just from looking at the bracket, but before, of course, they finally, removed the bracket with their CSI teams. But just looking at the bracket, you could tell it was an older.
So having installed two of them myself, that sure looks like the old model that we have.
Okay. All right. So again, you would have to get fairly close to the home and then fairly close to the the router in the home to be able to disrupt things.
Correct. Yeah. So the ones that if we were to buy this right now, it's not going to knock out the entire neighborhood block. It's going to isolate the network that it's trying to disrupt. And you've got to be fairly close. You've got to be within, I'd say, probably 20 or 30 meters from the house. So as you're walking up, there's definitely a chance that you're going to get caught on camera. But just knowing how these cameras operate, sometimes at nighttime when the IR cameras kick on, you can hear either an audible click for the light turning on that you can't see, or the red lights may kick on. So this person, as they approached, may have been depending on a potential Wi-Fi jammer in their pocket. But at the end, something happened and it drew their attention to that camera on the front of the house.
Yeah.
So you just said it has to be 20 to 30 feet away. I mean, how would that explain the other ones on the street that the signal is jammed? I'm not sure. I'll have to ask that clarifying question. And to review, I certainly don't think this was a burglary gone wrong. I think Nancy Guthrie was absolutely the target, and it was either a punishment or revenge. And I'm pretty sure that they meant to kill her at this point, unfortunately. At day 35, I mean, we're not hearing too much talk about her being brought back alive, unfortunately. It's not impossible, but the odds are pretty low at this point as well. But I do think that was their intention. I don't think it was a burglary gone wrong. I also don't think it was for ransom. I don't think that. I think punishment/revenge. Someone probably closer to the family somehow, or someone that knows them somehow. And maybe there was envy involved. Maybe people just wanted to tear Savannah down. I think part of the punishment is geared towards Savannah too. So that's what I think.
I was sort of mesmerized by the guy coming up and approaching his left side, meaning he was going to the left side of the door. There's some decorative stuff on the wall there, and then eventually favoring the right side where the doorbell cam was. But didn't seem like he knew right away, as most practiced burglars do, to cover it, spray paint it, do something to it.
That's right. And I mean, most humans, as we walk up to a door, we know which side of the door to go to. Now, if it's a commercial setting, whether we push or pull is a different story. But a house, when we walk up to that front door, we should know which hand we need to reach out to grab the doorknob. We should know if we need to approach on the left or the right. Like, did he not know this Wi-Fi camera was there, or was he just not ready for it?
Well, I have a lot of questions about the signal jammers in general, and I'm going to ask you in a minute, I'm going to ask you about when you said it doesn't take out the whole neighborhood. Well, what the heck could be the reason why so many of these neighbors are saying they had a neighborhood outage just within Nancy's area? But I'm going to ask that to you in a moment. Let me stick with this signal jammer business. When you leave the property, let's say you come in, you jam the Wi-Fi, you do your bad business, and then you leave. Does everything come right back up as normal? Or do you sort of leave a residual trail behind? Or do resets need to, I mean, this is my worst nightmare, right? Having to reset it because something happened the night before. What happens when the jammer leaves?
Fortunately, it can be very localized and it's temporary. So once the Wi-Fi connections make their handshake again, it can begin transmitting that video and audio signals back to be sent to Google. So it's not something that's going to last forever. We're not physically destroying the unit. This is just a temporary denial of service that's blocking that connection from occurring.
So life kind of resumes when the bad guy leaves.
That's right.
There was a really good question that I saw on Twitter from somebody named Stephanie _live. She asked, could a jammer be flown in on a drone?
I guess technically, yeah.
But would it jam the drone operations?
That's another question. So if we are broadcasting a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi signal and we're blocking that same signal, if the drone is operating on it, if we're not specifically targeting this house that we're going to, it could. However, most the available on the market devices right now, it's not going to block every 2.4 gigahertz network. It's going to be selective about which ones and which channels it's blocking on. So I guess theoretically, could it? Yes. It all depends on if the same band is being used for the Wi-Fi unit and the drone itself.
That is interesting. Flying in a signal jammer on a drone. I don't even know how that would work, but it's possible, I guess.
I did some reading up on the jammers, and I think CNET reported that they're not as daunting as they seem. Like, we all clasp our pearls and freak out that, oh my God, our systems don't work anymore. Can you summarize why that is, that they're not the boogeyman we think they are?
So if you look at how easy they are to set up, just it has a little display on it. You can flip through, select the channels you want to try to block and intercept. They are something that is very common nowadays. And they've been around for years. So Wi-Fi technology is old in terms of digital forensics and technology itself. So because this is an older version of networking, the same thing with all of our home devices, they all, with the very exception of very few, operate on new modern bands of internet or Wi-Fi connections. So these 2.4 gigahertz networks, for a very long time, we've understood those to be weaker of the two. So there is a boogeyman effect out there. It's just there are certain pieces of our technology that we rely on daily that can be very easily disrupted.
So basically, if we just update our Wi-Fi, we're one step ahead of the bad guys' crappy jammers?
So it's not just the Wi-Fi. This is the physical devices themselves as well. Oh. So I've looked into doing it myself. I've got a couple of Ring cameras at the house. With Wi-Fi, you have to get like the latest, greatest. You have to upgrade everything. Your Wi-Fi router that's broadcasting the signal, and then all of these endpoints, or what we call Internet of Things devices that are connected to it.
The other question I had for you is, how do these jammers affect Bluetooth? Because I was wondering if some of these cameras might operate on Bluetooth, and might it disrupt your Bluetooth apparatus in the home as well?
So just as really any wireless signal, you can send competing signals. You can think of it that way. We're mimicking the signal. We're putting a device in the middle that's intercepting and blocking those communications. So jammers themselves, when we think of them,
So here's a question about people with jammers. What is a legit use of a jammer? I mean, outside of law enforcement, what's a legit use for a jammer? Why would you ever have one if not for nefarious purposes? Chat, can you think of a reason why you would have one? I'm all ears.
Like a person that we're having a conversation and somebody's screaming at the top of their voice and you can't hear what's going on. It's just a complete loss of signal. You can't understand.
You're saying we're having a conversation and someone starts screaming. That's the jammer.
Correct. That's a jammer.
We can't hear the person we're talking to because someone's screaming close to us. That's the jammer.
Correct. So with what we think happened.
By the way, Jake, you know how I need you to talk to me like I'm 5, because you are that guy that has more degrees than a circle. And I am that guy that basically types with 2 fingers.
Yeah. So, but what we really think could have, in the most likely scenario, this isn't some high-level government spy that's at the root of all this. Could it be? Absolutely. But there are things right now that we could still affect the same crime by purchasing items on Amazon.
So with the Bluetooth issues, I was wondering if it's possible. We've heard from the sheriff that Nancy's pacemaker separated from her Apple device at 2:28 a.m. And I just wondered, and that's Bluetooth, right? And I was just wondering if a signal jammer may have jacked with that in any way so that piece of data, 2:28 a.m., may not be as factual as we think.
So Bluetooth's a little bit different. So for most residential Wi-Fi units, we're constantly broadcasting our network out there for people to connect to. So when I think of our neighborhood, I can see all of our neighbors. I can guess at which one's theirs. With Bluetooth, you have to turn that into pairing mode. So there's not a constant.
So a signal jammer doesn't interrupt a pacemaker, though. It can interrupt the connection, perhaps to the transmitter or a phone, but it doesn't stop the pacemaker from working. So, and I don't know. I don't even know how well it would stop the transmitter to the pacemaker either.
Connection that's being broadcast out there that you could see readily. So I don't think it's the same. I think that physical disconnection is her getting out of Bluetooth range, which is significantly smaller than Wi-Fi range.
So you don't think that a jammer could have disrupted this data that we seem to think indicates Nancy was taken away at 2:28?
I think that Bluetooth drop is more likely physical separation from the devices, us walking away from it or being pulled away from it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, and the Bluetooth connection is much shorter than the Wi-Fi, even though Wi-Fi is not that long either from your hub, or not that far, I should say.
I think this is technology,
not a jammer. Well, now go to this whole entire neighborhood business, because this just kind of blew my mind. From what I know, the little that I know about jammers, you don't sort of walk in James Bond style and darken a neighborhood and then, do your business. It's very, very specific and very localized. You have to be very proximate to your.
And to be clear, there's no evidence so far that they actually did use a signal jammer. This is all just a speculative theory about why some other of the neighbors can't access their Ring or Nest Cam footage for that time. This is just a guess. This is not fact. I'm pretty sure this is just a guess.
Target. So what do you think explains this very bizarre reporting? And Brian Enton was very clear. Possible internet outage FBI is looking at the time that Nancy Guthrie went missing. One neighbor says his Ring Cam history is mysteriously not available now, the night that she disappeared. So walk me through what that says to you.
So when we think of how our homes are set up, we have a home network. Your neighborhood has a network and individual branches within that neighborhood. Now, when we think of, could this be a neighborhood-wide, like specific spy level access? It could be. It's in the realm of possibilities. But again, what was this internet like before this incident? Did they constantly have issues? Were they constantly complaining to?
And if you listen to Brian Enton, how many times has Brian Enton said the internet connection is terrible there? So that's something to keep in mind too. Could it just be that it's just a Wi-Fi weak spot or a Wi-Fi dead zone? That could be.
Their internet service provider because of these outages, or is this an isolated event? Is this something that it just so happens that this neighborhood was experiencing an outage? So could there be some kind of physical disruption within the internet service provider's network? Yes. I think, again, that's less likely. I think it may be an overstatement of what actually occurred.
But even several neighbors, I want to say it's possible there's a coincidence, right? But in my line of work, coincidences are kind of rare. It's why juries are asked to use their noggin, right? And
That's
their
right.
good sense. But, a lot of these neighbors have said to the FBI, well, let me say this. They are reporting back to reporters that the FBI is discussing with them this internet outage that was just specific in Nancy's neighborhood very, very late at night, which is when most people were sleeping. You think it's really just, we could chalk it up to coincidence, or do you think there could be something more to it?
So there should be breadcrumbs left behind on the internet service providers end. They should be able to tell, did we lose connectivity to this block of devices, so this set of neighborhood homes? But given that, and I can think in our neighborhood, there are 3 or 4 internet service providers that are, flip a coin on every single house of which one's in service there. But if this is all single isolated, say it's just her block, her direct neighbors, perhaps there is some level of credibility.
That's what's weird. It's kind of just in the vicinity of her home, as the reporting goes. It's the folks who are close to her, not a system-wide community, just her little neighborhood.
That's interesting. But again, like, the internet service provider should be able to say, yes, we lost connectivity to this section of devices within our network.
So that would be interesting to hear what the internet provider would say. Whatever it is in Arizona, okay, at this time, was there outages or was there not? Is it just a normal bad service, or is there something nefarious going on? Those are the 3 options, right?
At no fault of our own.
Correct.
Meaning it's something out there that did it.
Could be. But that's when we think of physically coming into the homes as some type of fiber connection or cable connection. So it's a physical line running to the house. So that would require some kind of either interception from a hacking end or some kind of physical disconnection damage to that infrastructure.
So here's the options, chat. We got a multiple choicer. So 1, what do you think explains the outage? Is it just press 1 for just a normal bad service area? Press 2 for a specific outage in that area that has more to do with the internet provider? Or press 3, signal jammer. So those are the choices. 1, just a normal bad service area. 2, a specific outage in the area, service provider to blame. Or 3, signal jammers in the area, or by the accused kidnappers or murderers, honestly.
To each and every one of the homes that was reporting a disruption.
Or if we think of it as a branch or a stem of homes, but that should be something that it's not, you can't just simply unplug it and replug it. I guess in a possibility you could, if you knew exactly which line.
And you got to go up a pole, right?
Right. Well, you could either go up a pole or down into some of the green ground units that we see in our neighborhoods. If you get into that, could you potentially unplug something? Potentially, yes.
It seems like it's becoming more and more implausible with each of these, explanations. But I am still
So we got 11 people think it's just a bad service area.
confounded by the fact that they all, at this particular time, this critical time, right around 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, are reporting, these outages. What also might explain the neighbor who said he lost all of his video that night, and that it was unusual for him to lose all of his video?
It's hard to say. That's, again, the typical Wi-Fi ban that we see being used.
10 people think it's an internet outage in the area. So this is a super close vote, by the way.
Used for IoT, Internet of Things, and for our smart homes and our cameras is weak. And having seen the construction of the home in question, potentially it's the same there, as we do have a thicker solid wall of concrete or brick. It's difficult to say of what could cause that outage.
It buoys me to hear you first throw out a term like IoT, which I glazed over, and then you just told me it was as simple as Internet of Things. Like, thank you.
This is all those little tiny devices in our home that requires an app for us to log into that gets connectivity to our networks. It's your smart homes, your doorbells, your refrigerator can be considered not.
And 12 people think it was a signal jammer. So 12 wins. Most people think it's a signal jammer.
IoT device. So it's something that is becoming interconnected to our networks.
And it's an acronym, and I'm down for that. So let's talk about Google, the struggles that Google has had to scratch whatever data they could from whatever they had. Don't get me started on how weird it is that they had it at all. Because if I don't have a subscription, I'm not expecting y'all got anything on me, but they did. And they were able to scratch some things, not all things. But would the jammer affect that too?
So we should potentially see from the connectivity side, we should see some packet loss. We should see
what's that packet loss?
So packet loss is when we think of how data is sent and received, it's in chunks. So we could potentially see that we lost chunks, or we didn't receive them in the correct order, or we just lost it for a certain amount of time in general. So packet loss is typically associated with these deauthentication attacks. Is we're intercepting them, we may just completely lose that signal. So we may have that drop in service. So if you think of like when your internet goes out, you can still be broadcasting that Wi-Fi signal, but the internet itself is not connected. So your local network may still work, but the internet, when you're reaching out to go to Google or to Amazon, all of those pieces may not be available.
So this kind of makes sense then, because they've been very cagey about what they've told us. You know, one of these images indicates that it might have been taken on a different date.
So before we go on with this, please remember to like this video faster than your dog wants pets when you walk home through the door. Likes are free, by the way, and likes are for my shadow animals, Shadow the Night Owl. And come say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat and subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
And yet the sheriff won't confirm that and actually keeps, throwing cold water on it, even though every single journalistic outlet that's covering the story has sources that says otherwise.
Yeah. So whenever we're carving for data, or we're going back into potentially data that has been rolled off the back end, so we don't keep all of our data forever. It would be a mountain of data. Once that data goes to either be rewritten over or go to be deleted, when we're carving back from that, we have the potential to only get bits and pieces, and we may not have every single bit and piece to have a completely playable video. And that's why we may only have screenshots. We may only have a few seconds of video available. And the other really important piece to think about is from the internet service provider's end of whoever's feeding internet to this home, those logs that they have access to don't last forever either. So it's something that if we're more than a month out from the incident, those logs may have rolled off the back end already, and we may no longer have access to them.
Yeah, well, luckily they got them, I guess, within 2 weeks of the incident, and we're working feverishly up until that time.
So that was with Google. So
that was with Google.
Definitely we got something back from Google. But if they didn't know about this potential internet outage, the internet service provider may no longer have those records that are going to show the connectivity issues.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Gosh, you'd think that they'd have them within 30. We're at what, day 34 now? Yeah, you'd think that they would keep them at least that long.
Yeah.
For crimes, because your job is forensics, and that stuff makes it into courtrooms all the time. And they seem to have records and logs that go back years, but you're saying that it could be just a matter of days?
So the basis of a lot of the logs that we use in really any digital investigation from internet service providers are billing records. So it is a proof.
So keep in mind, folks, there could be so much that law enforcement and the FBI just hasn't told us yet. They might know some of this. They might know some of the cell phone records and logs and whatever else. They might know all sorts of things that they just haven't told us. We have to remember that.
Of service. So that's what they want to be able to support, that if they get sued, that they say, hey, our internet was out. So they can say, no, you had connections. Just like on our cell phone plans, the number of minutes we used is still calculated.
But the details, maybe not so much.
Correct. But the finite details of, hey, we lost connectivity to our Wi-Fi signal or internet connection for this few minutes, that may not be kept for years, months or years. So it may be a matter of days.
So one of the things that's been kind of like gnawing at me is this.
So we got a new member here. We're going to be doing some, thank you for becoming a member, United States Dale. We're going to do some live streams soon with members only. We got to figure out what time I should do them though. Earlier? I guess earlier would be best. But let me know, members out there, when would be good for you to do a members only live chat or Q&A?
Picture that you've seen, a close up of the suspect's pocket and whatever the hell is sticking out of it. For some, it looks like the edge of an iPhone. Others have said, no, you don't rob a house with your pockets wide open and your iPhone hanging half out, and most front pockets can fit an iPhone. Others have said it looks like the antenna of a walkie-talkie to me. And then I wondered about signal jammers. And as I don't know much about signal jammers, what do you think is in that pocket?
So there's really no way to tell. Even the images that we've blown up and circled, they're still very, very pixelated. Could it match what we would think of a possibility of an antenna? Possibly. I don't see a cell phone there. I see that it appears that it's something physically sticking out of the pocket. I think there are plenty of antennas that I can think of in our office right now that could potentially match what this looks like. And one of those being a Wi-Fi antenna.
Really? A Wi-Fi jammer antenna, you mean?
So the antennas on some of the available marketplace jammers, they look exactly like you'd see on a Wi-Fi unit in your home.
So it would look like that picture.
Potentially, yeah.
Another detective weighed in and said, for 35 years, I carried one of them damn walkie-talkies in my pocket, and that's exactly how it hangs, and that's exactly how it sticks out, and the antenna never can fit in the pocket. So he was dead set on the fact that it was a walkie-talkie antenna, but
Yeah, so please remember to like the video. Faster than a politician lies. Likes are free.
I could tell you from my days of carrying a Motorola walkie-talkie, that one looks a little bit too thick. However, when it is thick like that, I would expect it to be some type of Wi-Fi antenna. So
do you think that might be a jammer?
It's possible. It's some type of connectivity device, I think.
And of course, it wouldn't matter if he was jamming the Wi-Fi. Well, it didn't seem to matter anyway, because the images are there. Some of them. But I guess he wouldn't have known then that she didn't have a subscription, because if you don't have the subscription, you're probably not as concerned, unless, of course, you're worried they're just going to wake up.
Right. That's absolutely right. I think it's important to note that the way these Ring cameras record is it's not straight to the cloud. It's actually being stored on the device before being sent to the cloud. So that video can locally cache or download and then be broadcast up to the cloud. So just because we have that signal loss, we may only get bits and pieces. And again, it's very similar to we're trying to get things back from the server side of back-end data that's available. But as it's in that flow of data from recording the video to living on the device in some kind of memory platform and then transferred up to the cloud, we can still have some of that, we call it in the industry, called cache images. So they're stored locally. So that could be another explanation as to why we see just bits and pieces.
So the thing that I've been really curious about, and I have differed with everybody on what this suspect is doing when he comes up with the foliage. I believe he's grabbing it with his fists, because you can see him with the fist formation when he's holding it. And I think he's using the vine to try to tug the camera off from its mount, because there's very little space between those cameras and the mount. Yeah. There's only like almost like the width of a quarter.
I was going to say maybe an eighth of an inch. Yeah. Because if you get water behind them, they are going to be trashed really quickly. So they are typically held very firmly to the wall. I think possibly, but I think anyone in their right mind is going to know that a vine that we pull off of a flower bed or a lawn probably not going to be strong enough to rip something off the wall. So,
I would think so too, but this guy doesn't see, he's MacGyver at this point. He's looking all over the place.
And the way he's carrying the pistol, it's strange.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
So my question is, he did get the camera off the mount. Number one, there are no wires, so it's battery, right?
Well, so it can either be a battery unit, or we can have a power signal that comes in through that runs directly to the doorbell itself. So all doorbells require some type of power connection. So it doesn't have to be battery operated. Some are. Mine is hardwired to my home, and it's not hardwired for connections.
Yeah, I can't see any hard wires there where it was left off. It just looks as though it's clean and there's nothing. There's no portals. There's no wires. There's nothing.
I'd have to go back and look. I cannot remember what the
front
crime scene shot looks like.
let me ask you this. If it is battery, I think it is, just from my observations of the same photos, but if it's battery operated, Michael Ruiz from Fox News Channel reported that there were glass particles found below, that he could see glass fragments below the device at the front entrance. My source said that the cameras were smashed, so that would line up. But if it's battery operated and he took it in his pocket somewhere, obviously he didn't smash it all there, not all the detritus is there, took it somewhere and then smashed it and destroyed it, wouldn't we have some record of that camera moving in some way, or at least something to tell us where it might be?
So we're not going to have like a GPS signal for it. You could have the recordings from inside a pocket if we're carrying it, but as soon as we lose connection to that home's Wi-Fi, that video is gone forever.
So the best you could get is literally the hand over it, stuffing it in the backpack, carrying it, and then within about 20 yards, off you go. It's done.
Correct. Yep.
So that's not helpful. Well, maybe it is. We don't know whether they have something like that.
That's right.
They might have said that it's taking it to a vehicle and you get a wheel or something. Who knows? Yeah. But so the scratching capabilities, they wouldn't be affected in any. When I say the scratching, for those who have missed some of the episodes, what Google was doing was scratching like each layer of an onion off the video to try to get to something that might have ended up on her doorbell cam that night. And they got the images that they showed us, maybe more, we don't know. But the scratching efforts that Google did would not have been affected by a Wi-Fi jammer necessarily.
Correct. No, that's the second that Wi-Fi connectivity resumes, we're going to start broadcasting video again.
Next question.
So again, that leads me to believe it probably wasn't a jammer then, because the second that the jammer's not present, the Wi-Fi resumes and the footage should be able to be gotten. That's what I would think.
And if he had that, let's just say that is a Wi-Fi jammer in his pocket. Don't know, but let's just say, and it needs to be powered, right? Is it the same kind of thing that you can plug it into your car and keep it powered up, and therefore as he's driving, might it leave some kind of a popcorn trail as to what the egress from the neighborhood and the entry to the neighborhood was as well?
Yeah, so these are simply, you can either use a micro USB connection or a USB-C connection, just like we charge our phones. So the available units that I can think of off the top of my head, they don't have a cellular connection, and they typically don't have Bluetooth chips in them. I'm sorry, GPS chips in them. Mm-hmm. These are all, they're kind of isolated devices. So they have the ability to transmit and receive signals, but they're not like cell phones. They operate differently.
So they're not handshaking to each house as it's driving by?
Correct. They're typically not.
And each house, as it's driving by, look, they're pretty far set back on their properties, and I'm guessing that I think from what I've read, these jammers are like 30 feet kind of reach. Yeah, is that about right?
And the ones that we're describing today are ones that we would be isolated to hurt this single house. We identify which network we want to block, and we block that one. We disrupt it. It's not like a 2.
So that's the most important thing that he just said. The jammers impact basically the 20 to 30 feet around them, one house at a time. This does not impact other houses on the street, because unless there's multiple people with multiple jammers, okay, or that drone theory, okay, but I doubt it was a drone. Is it possible another person's by another house and has a jammer? Maybe, but I kind of think unlikely. I do think there was another person, but I doubt that's what their goal was. I'm going to signal jam. Maybe though. It's not impossible.
0.4 gigahertz signal for every single Wi-Fi unit out there. We are being very specific and intentional about the device that we're targeting, which is the Wi-Fi unit that would be inside this home.
Meaning you got to stand out there and dial and figure it out until Correct. It's going to do, like you're actually doing work outside the home on your device until you realize you got a hit.
But that may also be something that you pre-plan. You may come back to the scene multiple times. You may say, hey, yep, she is broadcasting at 2.4 gigahertz. We know what the Wi-Fi name is. We're going to try to intercept and block that signal.
Well, there is this reporting that it's possible he was casing the place, given the fact that there's reporting these images are on different nights. So you think that's a possibility?
Definitely a possibility.
So it's less possible then that as you're driving out, you're interrupting
tearing
people
up all
along
the
the
neighbors.
way.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's very unlikely.
there's nothing that you would be able to do in your business, digital forensics, to say, oh, look, there's some weirdness happening, as you head west.
Yeah, not necessarily, no. But I
Takes too
can
much
think
more
of
work.
like with our cell phones, I've had many cases that we're able to see somebody riding in a car and their phone may keep track of all of these homes that it's connecting to that are broadcasting signals, and you can actually pinpoint where this person physically drove. And so those are those breadcrumbs that we talk about of points in time that we can say that this device was operating near this Wi-Fi unit. With the available deauthentication devices for Wi-Fi attacks, those do not have that same capabilities.
Jake Green, it's day 34. If that guy had a cell phone on him, we'd catch him by now, wouldn't we?
It's very hard to say, especially in dense urban areas. Think about how many other thousands of phones are in that same connectivity area.
Not that many. Honestly, this is a really, like, these neighbors are all 4 acre, 1 to 4 acre lots. So, and the cellular service is terrible apparently in that area as well. But I wouldn't think there'd be so many at 1:47 in the morning.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. It's if law enforcement was to do what's called a tower dump and pull all of the devices that are connected to those antennas during this time period.
And that's something they planned on doing, right? That tower dump. We haven't heard any news about what they found in that tower dump, though.
Yeah, if he had a cell phone on him, it should be there. We should be able to see it.
Unless it was turned off like Koberger.
Possibly, yeah.
So they don't know. There's so many variables. Ashley's hoping, but this guy's a little more skeptical.
Possibly. What's that possibly business?
That's any other connections. If perhaps they had previously connected to her Wi-Fi and were still broadcasting. Your phone has the ability to connect over cellular connections and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Airplane mode typically doesn't turn off Wi-Fi, and it typically doesn't turn off Bluetooth connection. So you're still broadcasting and receiving. Next time you're on a plane, when you put your phone in airplane mode and you're still on the ground, pull up Google Maps. You still can get a GPS signal even in airplane mode.
Yeah, it's why when you're driving and you're in low cell service, you can still get waves.
Still kind of
you still get your directions. More or
that's
less.
exactly right.
But so that's airplane mode. And I was very interested to hear that because your apps are still going and all the rest. But when you turn your phone off, it becomes a brick, doesn't it?
It can. So modern iPhones specifically go into what's called a low power state. So my iPhone's sitting on my desk right now. If I was to turn it off, there is still what's called a near field communication that if I bring another cell phone close to it, it can actually communicate with my device. I say that as a client's calling me.
Well, but you say that. And then the first thing I think of is that he got near Nancy and her bedside table has her iPhone on it. So that's our thought is that's where her iPhone was. So that's possible that there'd be a connection there.
It's at such a very high level within Apple's communication protocols of how they operate. The way we've seen this in digital forensics is when I want to send a kill command to my phone to wipe it remotely, say I lose it.
So no one knows anything about whether this guy had a cell phone on him. I doubt it. I doubt he brought it. I doubt the other person brought it. But no one knows. No one knows for sure. I would imagine they could find what was going on with that tower dump, but we don't know yet. We just don't know.
Stolen. If I log in and say, hey, next time you see this phone, wipe it, that near field communication signal is what is used when another iPhone comes near it. So it's not going to log every iPhone that it's near, but it has the ability to still communicate even when
it's going to knock on the door of it.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, okay, I'm just assuming that work has been done, that they've taken Nancy's phone and checked to see if any bad guy with a phone turned off came near it for this near field signal. So
it's going to really depend again on was it an Apple phone? If it was a Google phone or an Android, we're not going to be able to see those logs.
I think it's an iPhone.
For Nancy's phone, yes, but for our suspect's phone, if they're not in a communication channel together, we're not going to have those logs. We're not going to be able to see what was near.
These are pretty rare, aren't they, in burglaries? I mean, I know SatG, the South American Gang Network, they're using signal jammers in the high end neighborhoods that they knock off. But generally speaking, using these jammers, it's pretty rare still, isn't it?
I think it's more common than we think.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. And again, if we hop on Amazon right now, we could probably have it in 2-day shipping. So ready to go on Sunday. For anybody who's watching right now who's worried about all this,
You can hardwire your devices. You can hardwire your security system, and then you have no concern at all about this, right?
That's right. Then we're only concerned with losing power. So the other very strong pieces that you can do to try to prevent this is don't use aged Wi-Fi bands like 2.4 gigahertz. Get devices that have 5 gigahertz connections. Enable the highest level of Wi-Fi protections you can. So it's called WP3. We want to enable those to give us the best shot of staying ahead of all of these types of attacks. And then for all of our home devices, our cell phones and our computers, is keep your operating systems up to date. That's always one of the very first line of attacks, is when we have old devices running old operating systems. They're very easy to get into.
Yeah, it's all this digital hygiene that most of us just don't do, either because we don't understand it. It's a massive project, and it's like cleaning your closet. I'll get to it at some point, but it's really critical.
Yep. Absolutely.
So one last question for you. And I don't know that you have the answer, because I haven't been able to find anybody with the answer yet. And that is that the sheriff, in all of the weird language that he gives us, gave us a timeline that said at 1:47 a.m., her Nest Cam was disconnected. And at 2:12 a.m., someone appeared, a person appeared on a camera. And so I'm trying to make heads or tail of that. Can you?
Really, the only thing is they wanted to make sure their Wi-Fi deauthentication device was ready to go. So they rode by, checked it from the street, was able to hit that Wi-Fi unit and make sure that it was actually receiving that signal, and then came back a little bit later and hoped it was still working.
And it wasn't.
Right. That's exactly right. Is when they walked up, it was definitely not working.
Okay. So in plain English, that means that they may have tested the jammer at 1:47 and it's disabled because it's jammed. They drove away for whatever reason and then came back at 2:12 and it had reignited again and was back up and running and now captured this image.
That's right. And perhaps when he walked up, it wasn't running in his pocket.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think of that. So it's possible that the 212. So TMZ had a report a while ago from a law enforcement source that said that the image that you see with him in the backpack and the menacing ski mask is at 212, which I kept thinking, okay, well, that's fine. But what happened at 1:47? And now that would make sense if a jammer was used.
Got to case the scene before you go to it.
Do you think a jammer was used here?
Given the odd shaped antenna looking thing in his pocket, I mean, that could also be just a regular old off the shelf walkie talkie. So it could be something we could use. But given that we've lost signal, I would think less likely. It's very hard to say. I think it's in the realm of possibilities, but it's very difficult to say definitively and scientifically.
Here's one other question. If this scenario that you've described, 1:47, the jam happens, 2:12, or maybe he goes back around the back side of the property at that point and does business around the back and then comes back around the front. And at 2:12, he thinks it's jammed and he walks up. Maybe that's why he's so nonchalant, because he doesn't believe that the camera's actually going, but he wants to make double, triple sure and get that thing off the mount. However, he ended up doing it. And I think he smashed it because my source said he smashed it and there's glass below and it's missing.
Yeah. Like what is the easiest way for us to terminate this device is take a hammer to it. Like just break it. Especially if you're going to go in and kidnap somebody, why wouldn't you just break it? I mean, they're going to know she's missing, and a hammer's not going to leave DNA evidence behind unless you leave the hammer. But if we just smash that device, I think that would have been the most logical way of doing this, instead of trying to implement technology.
Or those obnoxious little fingers that we saw him groping the camera with those gloved hands, hopefully covered in his saliva from the bite light,
or sweat or anything else that could potentially leave DNA behind.
Yeah. Lots of people don't realize putting your gloves on, you still do things. You still touch your seat of your car and your, and your hair and your face and you wipe your, whatever it is. And thank God for that, because there's a dumb criminal born every day. Jake Green, thank you. You have no idea how much I appreciate my conversations with you, because everything you say is new to me and I appreciate it.
Glad to do it. Thanks, Ashley.
All right. So that is where we stand on Friday, March 6th. We're wrapping up week 5, which is just, listen, as I started this podcast by saying, don't freak out. The case is not going cold. It is not cold, But I will say this. Remember during the Idaho investigation, after those 4 innocent kids were killed, we wondered if the police were bungling idiots or if they knew what they were doing, and they don't have anybody, and it's week 5 and it's week 6.
So, I mean, right now, what do they have? They have that mixed sample of DNA, and they might be able to do some genetic genealogy tests from there. But again, I would have thought they left some kind of DNA in there, but it sounds kind of disappointing, the quality of sample they did receive from the house. And they didn't bring that mat. Why did they not bring the mat? That's just and they let people walk all over the stupid mat before the FBI even got there. So I would have thought they would find something better than what they did. The only hope is they're just not telling us. They found some, but they didn't say.
And that's how long it took to find Brian Koberger. It took until week 6. And it was a tiny speck of really shitty DNA on that knife sheath, right? It wasn't a perfect sample, but they went to Othram Labs in Texas, and Othram, with their incredible skills at the forefront of DNA technology, they were able to extract a profile. It was enough of a profile to not go to CODIS. And why would it be? Brian Koberger wasn't an offender at that time. He is now. But they went through the familial and the IgG methods, right? They went through investigative genetic genealogy, and they found him. And it took more than 6 weeks. So I caution you, I urge patience. I think they're going to solve this. I don't think that one guy can outsmart the entire U.S. government and the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Those homicide detectives, look, they're working really, really hard, and they are working together with the FBI. And so with all the technologies that we have and all the abilities and all the focus.
I mean, you would have thought so, right? I mean, again, the only hope you can have is the Brian Koberger case took a little bit of time. But I don't think this case kind of has the breakthrough that one did. That one, they found the sheath of the knife, and they were able to connect that to the father, I guess, right? His DNA. What's the equivalent in this case? I don't know. But while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for the spirit animal of the channel, the night owl, because I'm a night owl. And also come in and say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. And I go live every night at around 10 p.m. Eastern to talk about true crime and current events. And I use my experience with mental health, addiction, narcissistic abuse, narcissistic family systems to apply my unique knowledge to those things. And I'm very thankful to all the help I've been getting here, all the support. Super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Memberships, great way to support the channel. And so are super stickers.
And all the eyeballs on this case, I think we're going to solve it. You know, you all, the true crime community, you helped to find Gabby Petito. And without you, we may never have found her. Okay. So I do believe that with all of your eyeballs, with all of the focus and energy of the authorities and the law enforcement personnel who are working on this, I think we're going to find this guy. Yeah. Prosecuting him, it might be tricky, right? But it's not to say it can't happen. And to that, I want to say this, and this is a very personal message.
So it's a good poll someone suggested in the live chat. Do you think they're going to find the person who did this? Person or persons? Press 1 if yes, or press 2 if no. So yes, if you think they're going to catch whomever did it. 2 is no, you don't think so.
I want to talk to the girlfriend or former girlfriends of whoever that fucking guy is, right? You recognize him. You know it's him, right? You recognize the body shape, the bend, the way he walks, the maneuver, the clothes, probably the clothes, the ski mask. You might have seen that too. That backpack, you really recognize that. You probably saw that. If you're a current girlfriend, this is your guy. Yeah, this is your guy. Seriously? I got news for you. You're going nowhere fast with this guy. Yeah. There's no honor among thieves and lovers. And you know something? If he's prepared to do this, you don't matter. And you never really will, even though you think you do. But you know what does matter? $1 million. That, sister, is going to change your life.
Well, Ashley Bansfield is trying to guilt and shame the person. But in Mexico, you cross a cartel, you know what they do? they kill you. I'm not saying this is a cartel thing, but in the culture of crime, it is a grave sin to be a snitch. It just is. Some of the worst things I've seen on Facebook were people that got caught snitching and they would do public executions that were recorded, that back when Facebook was less censored, or I guess it was years ago now. I've seen some awful things. So again, that could also be in the back of someone's mind, right? Okay, well, yeah, $1 million is nice and all, but what if I think I'm going to get killed for coming forward? That's a real concern here, probably, right? The people who did this, they seem to have no problems taking a life. And do you think they wouldn't hesitate to maybe do that? Maybe? I don't know.
$1 million. That's going to change your life. But this fucker, he's never going to make $1 million. He is never going to be dedicated to you. He's got something wrong. And that something wrong will apply to you. If not now, one day. 1-800-CALL-FBI. It's $1 million. 1-800-CALL-FBI, girl. And to the other girls, take a closer look. You know him. You may have gone to school with him. You may have dated him. He may have annoyed you at some time. But if you did, you know who he is. Don't be worried about him. Don't fear him. The $1 million will be all the security that you need. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Girls, come on.
Yeah. Well, go check out Ashley Banfield, support her channel, subscribe, watch her content, like her content. This part, this is her virtue signaling here, but I get it.
You know who he is. Just look closer. And even if you think it's possible, call 1-800-FBI. Somebody is going to turn this son of a bitch in, right? And if you're protecting him, just ask yourself a really big question. Why? Why? Is it really worth it? Because you know what's worth it? $1 million. You'll have that. But he's never going to get you that. And he's never going to make you feel safe because you know he's got this in him. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
I don't know. For some reason, that was kind of cringe by Ashley there. Because let's face it, get million, I think it's like 1.2 million now, right? With the combined rewards or something. But they got to pay taxes. Can't forget Uncle Sam. What's Uncle Sam going to take out of that? 300 to 400,000? I mean, reward money could be taxed at an even higher rate. We're just like gambling winnings. Like gambling winnings is taxed at freaking 40% or something like that. So again, I kind of think if the $1 million was going to work, it would have worked already. But that's my opinion.
For being a part of this community. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe and join our club as well. I'm going to be doing some member events in the near future, as well as some videos that are.
All right.
What on earth is...
So this is Joe Pags. Check out Joe Pags' channel. Subscribe to him. Support his content. And he interviewed our friend, Brian Etten.
Going on? We're hearing nothing about the Nancy Guthrie case. Where is she? An 84-year-old woman doesn't just disappear into thin air. She's somewhere, and we're not getting any updates. Is the case officially cold? I got with Brian Etten. He joins me on this program. He's from News Nation. I think he's done just the best reporting job on this case, and he brings details you haven't heard before. Were you under the feeling and belief that this could have been cartel-related early on? Because I think a lot of people have said it probably isn't now. But did it look like it could be?
So someone saying that money's tax-free in the comments. I would need some evidence of it being tax-free. I somehow doubt it.
So I never thought it was cartel related just because, and you mentioned, I mean, I've got to know a lot of people here and they know the cartel really well here, people in law enforcement. This guy was a little more of an amateur. You remember the video where he tried to put the grass up over the camera
Yeah.
to cover it. I mean, the cartel would have been organized. They would have pulled the camera right away. They know what they're doing when it comes to kidnappings. And also the motive for them to kidnap Nancy Guthrie just never really made much sense. But I do think that it is possible that Nancy Guthrie was taken to Mexico, not by the cartel, but by someone else.
Okay.
Just because we're so close to Mexico. I mean, it's, it takes an hour to get there. As I showed you in that report I did.
Right. As someone saying in the comments, Jennifer Koffendorfer said it wasn't tax-free, which is also what got me thinking about it as well. But if someone can look it up, or I'll try to look it up, we'll get to the bottom of it. Someone said if it's given anonymously, it's tax-free. Well, if Savannah Guthrie gives it, that's not anonymous.
I mean, it's very easy to get in. You don't even need an ID. You're not asked any questions. No one searches you. You literally just walk right into Mexico. The questions come when you come back into the U.S., but getting into Mexico is very easy. So it's hard to just say, it's hard to discount that possibility just because it's so close.
It's Brian Entin, incredible reporter, national correspondent for News Nation. Go and follow him everywhere at Brian Entin, E-N-T-I-N, over on X and elsewhere. Also on YouTube, Brian Entin Investigates, a great follow there too. When you got there the day after, did it look like a standard case, not that this happens often, of somebody breaking in, maybe something went wrong, then they end up taking the person? Did it look like it was a targeted kidnapping? Could it have been a random thing? As your journalistic mind starts clicking into gear as you're there, what do you start thinking right up front? Again, I know that you're everything that you've reported to us is because you've got evidence of it and your reporting is great. But when you show up, and I was a journalist for a long time, you start...
Triple A's got a good one there. It's tax-free to hit the like button. I love that. I actually might win. So remember to hit the like button, tax-free to hit the like button here.
Setting the scene, what in your head did you think was going on?
So it never really made a lot of sense from the beginning, which is one of the reasons I've seen such an intriguing, disturbing case. I don't think, based on everything that I know so far, that it's random. That just doesn't add up. I mean, Nancy lives in a very off the beaten path neighborhood. It's hard to get in and out. I still have to use my GPS every day to figure out how to get to her house and back to my hotel because it's zigzaggy, it's rural. It's a very interesting neighborhood. It's very dark. I mean, it's like pitch black at night. They have an ordinance where you're not allowed to have like outdoor lighting because there's so many stargazers.
Wow.
So just the fact that someone would just randomly choose that house to take an 84-year-old woman.
Certainly not. Certainly not a burglary. Certainly not random, right? Brian knows that. So here's the general rule on reward money. If you receive money as a reward, for example, for information leading to an arrest, finding a missing person, or solving a case, and guess what? That's exactly what we're talking about here. The Internal Revenue Service usually treats it as taxable income. That means it must typically be reported as other income on your federal tax return. Examples of taxable rewards. These are usually taxable. Crime tip rewards, like from police or Crime Stoppers. Missing person rewards. Corporate rewards for information. Lottery or promotional rewards. Rewards for returning lost property, in most cases. Often the organization paying the reward will issue a Form 1099 miscellaneous if the amount is $600 or more. Rare exceptions. Reward money might not be taxed if it legally qualifies as a gift, given out of generosity with no expectation. However, most public rewards do not qualify as gifts because they are offered in exchange for information or action. So there you have it.
That never really made any sense to me, just a random burglary. It seems like it had to be targeted for some reason, whether that's because of Savannah Guthrie, her daughter, maybe I've been looking a lot into the theory of, the possibility of just like a crazy stalker, someone obsessed.
Dana, thank you very much for becoming a member. Let me know when a good time for you to be a members only live chat would be for you. I'm in Eastern Standard Time.
With Savannah that, that went after her mom. I think that's a possibility, but I don't think I just personally don't think it's going to end up being like just a burglary gone wrong that's not targeted.
It is Brian Enton, great reporter from actually the senior national correspondent from News Nation. Go and follow him everywhere. So you get there and you start, putting together exactly what you can find out. The sheriff's department, I know this because I talked to Pinal County, former Pinal County Sheriff, Sheriff Lamb. Mark is a great guy. He was the county over. He says that the lead investigator on this has 2 years experience. The other investigators on this, the detectives, have like a year experience. And there was some infighting, I guess, recently in that sheriff's department in Pima County, where he actually was moving detectives that had all sorts of seniority to patrol jobs because they weren't getting along. Are you finding any of that infighting in the sheriff's department there as well?
Yes, and that became very apparent right when I.
And AAA, thank you for becoming a member, AAA. Let me know when a good time for a members-only live chat would be good for you. Eastern Standard Time is what I'm in.
Got here, which was really interesting. Like, I mean, within a couple of days, I started to peel back the layers. Like, there was a lot of just anger within the sheriff's office. The current sheriff, Chris Nanos, won by only around 400 votes. There's a lot of people who don't like him. There's a lot of people who think he's a terrible sheriff. And a lot of people have left. A lot of experienced people have left the department because they just didn't want to work with him as sheriff. So yes, so a lot of the homicide detectives have like 2 to 3 years experience. A lot of the, veterans have left or retired early. And it seems like it's gotten better now, but for a couple of weeks, there was a real issue between the sheriff's office and the FBI, not getting along, not wanting to cooperate with each other. It seems the sheriff has had sort of a beef with the FBI for years. There was an investigation years ago.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't like the FBI. I will say, it seems like that's gotten better. They've got a task force now. I think a lot of those issues kind of worked themselves out, but it definitely seems like it may have impacted the investigation, at least at one point.
It's Brian Enton, by far the best reporter on this Nancy Guthrie case since the beginning, and I appreciate the time and the access. I find it odd, and again, as a former journalist that would sit down.
Amen to that by Joe Pags. Best person on the case so far. To me, Brian Enton, most integrity of all the people reporting this. I trust him more than anyone, and it's really not even close. So make sure you support Brian Enton. He's nice enough to never yell at me for playing his videos, so I appreciate that.
With sheriffs, I would sit down with police chiefs like you. I would sit down with mayors. I've interviewed the president at the White House. I get the feeling that the way he's doing media is really wrong, Brian. And I wonder if you'll give me an opinion on this, because for him to sit down individually with you and some other reporter and then 3 other reporters, he's not doing a daily press conference. He's not giving you guys an update. He's not allowing for open questions and answers. There seems to be a disconnect from what his job is. And again, I'll go back to Mark Lamb. As the sheriff, your job is to, of course, be the guy who oversees the jail. You oversee all of your deputies, but you're also the PR guy. You're the face of the department. Is Nanos figuring out how to do that better? Because the way he's done it so far seems really odd to me.
I think so, because he's gotten a lot quieter. I mean, there was one day, I think he probably did 25 interviews in one day. And I think he's realizing, it's better to just not say much right now.
Yeah.
But the issue with him is he would do an interview with us and say one thing, and then he would change what he was saying a little bit throughout the day, depending on who was interviewing him. And it became a little confusing. And he even said at one point, everybody's hanging on my every word. And it's like, well, yeah, you're the sheriff. This is, one of the biggest stories in the country. And yes, if you change something even a little bit, we're going to take that as fact, and it's going to become a big deal. And I think.
And that goes to show you, Sheriff Nanos wasn't used to having people kind of call him out like that, I guess, for actually not being consistent in his communication. So he wasn't used to that. If you give that a charitable interpretation, how many local sheriffs or police chiefs are expecting a case this large to come to their jurisdiction? Probably not very many. But that being said, considering it did happen there, he definitely could have done better. He opened up the crime scene too soon, spoke too much, then spoke too little, contradicted himself, confused people, confused his own department and the deputies. So a lot of things could have gone better.
I think he just didn't expect that, which was kind of surprising.
Why wouldn't he? I mean, again, he's the guy. I mean, that's kind of the job. It's all very strange to me. It's Brian Enton. Go follow Brian everywhere, especially over on X, where he gives updates like crazy. Brian Enton, just his first and last name put together. Where is the case now? Because I actually have some apps on my television where I can go and watch Tucson News every night, even from here in San Antonio, and they're running it in like the third block now. It's not even the big story anymore in a lot of these local Tucson stations. Where are we right now in finding Nancy Guthrie?
So I don't think it's a cold case. I will say that. I was just in Nancy's neighborhood right before I got on with you, and the FBI was out there again today. I don't, from what I know, and there may be things that I don't. There are things, a lot of things that I don't know. But my sense from the outside looking in is there's not really strong leads right now.
Right.
They had two raids where they, busted in people's houses and they detained two people 2 different times when we really thought maybe that was going to be it. Those didn't even result in arrests. And it seems those people actually had nothing to do with the Nancy Guthrie case. But I will say, I mean, with the resources they've still got on this, especially with the FBI and the DNA, that's going to take time. They can do this genetic genealogy, which we saw in the Brian Koberger case,
Right.
but that takes months sometimes, where they can find, a suspect's cousin or aunt or uncle and work their way in that way. Also, like the geofencing, that also takes time with the cell phone companies and the towers. So they're gonna catch the guy, and they've also got the photos. I mean, we have photos of the guy at the front door. So I don't think this is going to be a case where years from now we never had a resolution. But I also don't get the sense that like it's going to be solved within the next couple of days.
Brian, does it seem odd to you that we don't have anything today? After, like you said, they went and raided the guy's house, and they had him in the car for 7 hours questioning him. He's a delivery driver that might have delivered to the neighborhood, but he didn't remember if he delivered to the neighborhood. And we're all going, yeah, this is sketchy as hell. Then we were talking about possibly a family member. Is this a crime of passion? Does it seem odd that we don't even have at least a motive? And investigators, a lot of times, as you know, will not give us the motive publicly unless it can help them. Like, there's no ransom really being demanded. There's no sign of life that's ever been given. There's no reason that we can figure out why they take her from the home. If it's just a burglary, why do you injure her and take her out of the house? Is it strange to you that a month in, we don't have even the semblance of a motive?
Yes. And the ransom never really made sense because there was, like you said it, I mean, there was never proof of life. There was never a real way to exchange money besides that shady Bitcoin account. And the communication was very strange. So I think that was just someone.
All the ransom notes, to me, they were all exploiters. They weren't real. They weren't legit, if you ask me. And someone was saying Brian Netton needs to take a day off or two. Honestly, he probably will soon. If nothing happens in the next week or so, News Nation will probably tell him, yeah, Brian, you can take a day or two off. Now, his concern might be, well, if they give me a day or two off, they might just tell me to not come back too. That might be a thing. I don't know. I'm not sure what his level of autonomy is with News Nation. If he's like, hey guys, I think there's something going on here, and they give him the freedom to do it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who's pulling the strings.
Trying to take advantage of the situation.
I agree.
But at the end of the day, I mean, I've talked to criminologists. You look at statistics. I mean, again, these things, people don't randomly take 84-year-old women. It would be like the first time that it's ever happened. So there's going to be some connection at the end of the day to Nancy Guthrie or to Savannah Guthrie or to the family. I believe, but we just don't know yet. We don't know.
It is Brian Enton. Why isn't the sheriff allowing this United Cajun Navy to search the area? They seem ready to go, and I'm guessing they know the area very, very well. What's the issue there?
Yeah, that surprised me. They presented the sheriff with this 41-page plan. They can bring in 25 canines. They've got aerial support. They've got like thermal drones. And they don't, I mean, they're pretty reputable. They've done other big cases. They don't want to just do it on their own without the sheriff's blessing and sort of like some guidance. And the sheriff just won't entertain it. He really hasn't entertained any private search parties, which, I mean, you'd think that he would, because even if you say, hey, don't search near Nancy's house, but what about out in the desert? I mean, these people could solve other crimes. There's other missing people here that they may come across. So I'm kind of surprised, like, what do you have to lose, taking them up on their offer? But it sort of goes back to people who don't like the sheriff say, I've heard he's a controlling guy. He wants control of everything. Bringing in an outside party just isn't his style. So yeah, they basically haven't gotten any any approval or response from the sheriff's office.
Well, he's not doing very well controlling everything, so maybe he should bring in somebody from the outside. Just my opinion. Having said all of that, have you heard from Savannah Guthrie or any of Nancy's children? I would expect that they know that you've been all over this. And again, I'm not kissing your ass. You simply objectively have been the best reporter on this. Have you heard from them?
Well, thanks for saying that. No, I haven't, and I'm not really surprised. I mean, all they've done is release those videos. They haven't done any interviews or anything like that. I know Savannah, I saw her a couple days ago when she was outside the house, and now she's back in New York. But obviously my heart goes out to them. I mean,
yes.
I get so wrapped up in the investigation every day and I'm like chasing everything down. But then I think about I think about my own mom, and it's kind of unfathomable that like your 84-year-old mom just disappears out of her quiet, and this isn't in Tucson. I mean, we're outside Tucson. This is up in the foothills. This is an area where like stuff like people don't just disappear up there. It's a very nice neighborhood. Maybe they have a burglary once in a while, but that's it.
Are you surprised that I don't know if you being surprised is the right question. Let me ask you a better question. In talking to the investigators, are they surprised that we haven't had any more indication toward why or when or who got this done? And what I mean is off record, off camera, you and I have sources like that all the time. Are they going, we think it might be this? Or are they going, dude, we just don't have any idea right now?
Mostly we don't have any idea right now. I mean, there are a couple of theories I've heard about. I mentioned the Savannah stalker theory. And there doesn't seem to be one working theory, which is very different than other cases that I've covered where you mentioned it. I mean, behind the scenes, everyone will kind of have an idea of what happened, but you just can't report it because you don't have enough evidence yet.
Right.
But you have this sense and all the reporters talk about it, and your mom calls you and you're like, yeah, this is what really happened. That's really not the case here. I mean, we really just don't know.
Is the word from the investigators, both FBI and within the sheriff's department, that the release of the crime scene so early was a major problem? And again, I'll go back to what Mark Lamb told me. He said that he had reports that there were people using the bathroom. They released the crime scene. People just trucked in and out of the house, used the bathroom, do anything they wanted. Then they went, oh crap, let's lock it down again. Was that a major gaffe in that it could have really hurt this investigation?
What do you think, chat? Before Brian Nitton answers, was it a major gaffe to open up the crime scene too soon? Yes, press 1. 2, no, didn't make that much of a difference. But also, either way, definitely should have took it that mad as well. But what do you think? Major gaffe? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no.
Yes. And the sheriff actually kind of admitted it at one point and then walked it back. But yeah, it was bad. I mean, we were able to walk right up to the front door. We were the ones who got the video of the blood on the front steps because they cleared the crime scene. Everybody left, and it was like, well, let's go knock on the door and see if anybody's home. And then we're like, oh my God, there's all this blood.
Right.
And then they come back the next day and shut everything down again. I mean, that's a really big problem, especially, and I hate to think about this because when they catch this guy, you want to see this guy prosecuted. But, these are the kinds of things that become a really big issue in court one day when, chain of custody, and you can start questioning all sorts of evidence when you say, well, you opened up the crime scene and people were walking all over the place, And
then they got the pool guy there, and then Domino's shows up, tries to deliver some pizzas there. It just seems to be amateuristic. And I don't know this guy Nanos. He might be a nice guy, but it just seems like he doesn't know what he's doing.
So we had a unanimous chat. Doesn't happen very often, but everyone thinks it was a gaffe by Sheriff Nanos. Now, Joe Pags here is talking about the Domino's delivery driver. I think that's the Domino's to JLR incident, right?
You covered crime a long time. You don't make it to News Nation because you weren't good at your job. I mean, have you ever seen another police department or sheriff's department that just seem so lackluster for the first 3 to 5 days, in my opinion, and then sort of clicked into gear? I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I mean, it was very strange in the beginning. Like I said, the press conferences were strange. I think Nanos obviously wants to solve the case. I don't think he's a bad person. He really cares. He seemed very sympathetic towards the Guthries, and he's upset about the whole thing. But I think that, the FBI should have been in charge from the beginning. They don't have the resources to handle something like this. It's a really, really, and it's nothing on them. It's just a really unusual, twisted case that we haven't seen maybe ever before. I mean, for example, like Nano said, we're never going to get the video. I mean, he said that we're never going to get the video from the ring cams. She didn't have a subscription. FBI was able to get the video. They can just do things that local sheriff's offices can't And even talking to the detectives, many of them, I think they wish that Nanos would have just, said, hey, we'll help out. We're still here. We're partners, but you guys take the lead. And I think people would have respected that. I don't think that's a knock on him at all. I don't know why it's sort of like you have the Bigfoot here. I think that would have been, I think people would have been.
No, I agree with you. It's Brian.
So the big thing would have been, in order for the FBI to take over the case, Sheriff Nanos would have had to give it to them, or the Guthrie family would have needed to make a written request. Those were the two ways the FBI was going to take over. And clearly, or at least as far as I know, I should say, not clearly, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Now, that task force, though, maybe the FBI is in charge of what's happening now, and that's why Sheriff Nanos sent those 4 detectives and the 1 sergeant. I could imagine that's true. But we'll see. Also, while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free and tax-free. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
Enton, the connection got a little bit cheesy. Let's finish with this. About 30 seconds left, Brian, if you don't mind. And I really appreciate the knowledge and the information. What do you think is likely to happen next? Is there some big break around the corner that you feel is coming?
I wish I knew. Again, based on everything I know, 100% in my gut feel they're going to solve the case. I really do.
Okay.
I just don't know how soon it's going to be. Today, there was a little more activity that made me think, gosh, maybe this is going to be sooner than I thought in terms of just seeing the FBI out and about today. I wish I could tell you I wish I knew what was going to happen next. But I do think it's going to get solved. I mean, look, everybody moves on. It was the biggest story in the country. And then obviously the war broke out. And I get that, people move on, but they're not moving on here. I mean, you can see there's an FBI task force. You got President Trump talking about it. There's a lot of pressure on them to solve this thing. So I think it'll be solved.
At Brian Enton over on X, go check out Brian Enton Investigates over on YouTube. It is Brian Enton, great senior correspondent from News Nation. Keep up the great work, Brian. Great to meet you today.
Thanks so much, sir.
All right, we'll talk soon. We're back after this. Stay right here.
So I read the 2 ways the FBI gets handed the case is if Sheriff Nanos gives it up to them, or the Guthrie family / Savannah makes a written note. I'll look up where I found that, but that's exactly what they said.
On this rabbit hole too, Tony.
This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Bruschi.
So yeah, it's not an FBI case yet, but that was the point. The point is, for it to be an FBI case, Sheriff Nanos would have to give it to them, or the Guthrie family would have to request it.
And Robin Drake.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We got a lot going on today. Robin Drake is here with us, and Robin's going to be with us every day going forward,
Like the new intro.
as our co-host. So Robin, welcome from graduating from being guest to co-host, and of course your insight completely I'd say priceless on all these cases that we've been talking about for the last many years. Really excited for you to be here in this capacity and to join in the conversations with all of our guests throughout the week as well. So for folks wondering, well, what about the other guests? They're still here too. Robin's just going to be with us on those conversations as well. So welcome.
You can see the smile on my face just beaming. My goosebumps are going. When you feel, it's so funny. We talk about such unhealthy things all the time, but when you're part of a healthy group, you just get excited.
Yeah.
So it is a great pleasure to be with you all.
It's a healthy group. A healthy group talking about unhealthy things.
Yes,
which is
crazy talking about the uncrazy.
Exactly. We have spent now 4 weeks, going on 5, dissecting every visible detail in the Nancy Guthrie case on the suspect, and we're gonna talk about the Nancy Guthrie case in 2 different lanes here this morning. We're going to talk about the suspect, and we're going to talk about the investigation and the myth of competency of each.
Yes, I love that. Yes,
of each, because we're looking at the suspect. That's what we're going to talk about first.
So this is retired FBI special agent and author Robin Dreeke. He's knowledgeable. I do find myself disagreeing with him a lot, but he's still knowledgeable.
The Walmart backpack, the awkward holster, the improvised camera cover, or whatever that is there. And the assumption underneath all of this is that this guy knew what he was doing, from some, and others saying, well, look how sloppy he is. He's grabbing foliage to cover the camera. Both, you can't really have them both coexisting, being competent and incompetent at the same time. I don't know, or maybe you can. Let's jump into to all of this, because this is something that I think a lot of people are trying to run through their mind with some sort of sensibility. And I think a lot of it comes down to, we sometimes expect things to be bigger and more grand and have a greater...
Crimes have consequences. I definitely agree. I don't think it was a jammer. I think it's a bad service area. Maybe there was a bit of an outage, but I don't think it was because of a jammer. So, but I think it was probably just more of a bad service area.
Meaning than they actually are in real life.
Yeah, boy, as I texted you nonstop over the weekend, Tony, as I typically do when I start doing my program prep, the interesting thing that happens to us, especially when we deal with cases that hit a national level, which is the ones we typically cover, is that each of us, including us, we create a confirmation bias, and we've talked about confirmation biases all the time, and our confirmation biases are based upon things we've been exposed to throughout our lives, especially in recency. And especially with cases like this, our confirmation biases typically come from 2 things. One, what we see and absorb from TV, and things like Criminal Minds and all these great Hollywood and television productions that talk about the idyllic world in which investigations take place, which there never is that way. And also what our hopes and expectations are as set by people that talk about these things, pundits like us and others. And so when an individual then starts consuming the reality of what is...
OC girl wouldn't be a forcing, it would be a requesting. Local law enforcement would request the FBI to take over. And considering the amount of eyeballs in this case and the gravity of the case, I'd be shocked if the FBI refused that request. Same if the Guthrie family said something.
Based on the confirmation bias they have, and they mismatch, they think something's amiss, and they start loving to poke holes at it. And especially when you don't have the 24-hour turnaround of resolution, or the 1-hour resolution that we're used to seeing on TV, and I know a lot of people have said this, but it still hits us that something must be amiss. And then what happens is people that love poking holes, and what I love about what we do is we don't poke holes, we examine. Someone pokes a hole, let's go down the rabbit hole. Someone pokes a hole, let's examine that. What happens is that when something doesn't go the way we want it to go, we're going to start having a negative confirmation bias, only looking for what someone's doing wrong, what's going wrong in the investigation. So we're always going to see things that are going wrong. And will we always find it? Yes, because it's human nature. No one is perfect. No investigation is perfect. But what happens is you start ignoring all the things that are going right. And so that's what I've done and continue to do, is like, I just always, for some reason, I have this ability to take this pragmatic, objective of view. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the research, and let's do comparisons to all these things. And so on par, and that goes with both the investigation itself as well as the culprit. What was normal, what wasn't normal, what stood out, what doesn't stood out. And to your point, when you started out in your opening, You can have both at the same time, I think. I think this guy that approached the door, he had reps. I remember the first time I saw that video image of him, so covered up, so well covered, face, everything. I mean, just think about this. He was, just to compare and contrast to Kohberger and him. That was Kohberger's first rep in trying to go in and kill someone, and he was sloppy. He did a lot of things right based on what he thought was going to happen, and then things went sideways when...
Can you imagine that, calling a murder a rep, like you're in the gym, hitting reps. If that's the metric here, the BTK killer and Ted Bundy, they got in lots of reps.
You had stress escalation hit. Things didn't go the way he wanted. He leaves night sheets behind, DNA and video footage of cars. All this thing went awry, and also what he was wearing. It was striking to them. And then you look at this guy. He had reps of hiding identity, I think, because we haven't found much.
Mm-hmm.
There were still flaws in it. And when he hit things he wasn't expected, that's when we start seeing it hit a little chaos for him, like taking brand.
And that's also a good point, that this guy might have had reps hiding his identity. What do you think, chat? Do you think the guy on the front porch had reps hiding his identity before, which is maybe one of the reasons why it's been so difficult to find him? So press 1 if you think he has, or she, but probably he had reps to do this. He's already hid his identity doing things like this. So he was advanced, didn't get caught. Or press 2, no, this is his first time.
And putting over ring cams and things, or even I still go back to the door selection. I think his selection of going in that front door, not a side door, side window back by the pool, that was a major boo-boo on his part because there was no ring cams back there.
Well, that to me, that's what strikes me.
So Robin Dreek is using the term reps as they've done it before. So he's saying the guy on the front porch on the Nest Cam, he did this before. He was hiding his identity in other cases. He's calling that a rep. So again, and it's true, right? I mean, any criminal, anyone who does something, every time they do it, it's a rep. And you get better, usually, the more reps you do.
About the whole damn thing is being off, is he went to the front door. He wasn't prepared for a doorbell camera.
Right.
But yet he has reps in this. How can the two both be true? I guess that's, I mean, to me, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a criminal. I'm not hitting up houses. But even without doing that, the first thing, if someone said, Tony, today's physical challenge on Double Dare is breaking into your neighbor's house. You're not going to be arrested. Just go get the flag in the upstairs, get on the hamster.
Look at Tony Bruschi pulling out the Double Dare on Nickelodeon references. Did you catch that? Holy mackerel. And it looks like everyone thinks this guy, except for George, everyone thinks this guy has had reps before hiding his identity. George does not.
Your wheel, and then you get it and you run out and you get covered in slime. Something like that. If it was like a non-threatening.
And Joshua does not either. My apologies for missing Joshua.
Evil thing to do. But if I were to do that, and they were like, okay, you got to kind of plan this out, the first thing I'd be thinking of, a doorbell, and you don't want to get caught, so we don't want to, you can't be identified. That's the first thing that would be on my mind. How is that not the first thing that's on this guy's mind that supposedly has some sort of reps here?
Well, speaking of reps, make sure you get your reps in hitting this like button. Those of you who are here watching, over 2,000 here, many of you haven't gotten in your rep of hitting that like button. Likes are free, tax-free as well. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already. You only need 1 rep subscribing to the channel.
So here's a way to think about it.
Okay.
Again, thought experiment. So all the nonverbal experts out there saying that he was fluid, he didn't stress anything, he looked, completely natural of doing what he's doing at their front door because he didn't have halting behavior. But like you said, he was a little weird with that ring cam on the front. So what would make something like that happen? What would make behavior like that? If he was having reps and breaking and entering of homes that didn't have ring cams, that stands to reason. What kind of homes don't have that? Is it a Nancy Guthrie kind of home, or is it a lower income kind of home? See what I mean? So,
or the age of the resident type of home too. I guess that's something else to consider in this equation, because look, I do not know the demographics of the neighborhood. I mean, it's kind of a blanket statement to say that like everybody down there is older and retired. That's not true by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a higher population of that there. And if you're in a higher income neighborhood, bigger homes, older homes, statistically, you're probably going to have more older, wealthier residents that may also not be as technologically inclined. So that may also then lead to maybe not as many Ring doorbells that all of us in the demographic of 25 to 64 have. And you get above that, you go 65 plus. I would imagine your amount of people with Ring doorbells dramatically drops. So maybe that's part of it too. I'm just kind of openly throwing that into the conjecture.
So basically,
if you haven't done what Dana has done, I gave you 2 likes, one from my phone, one from my TV, plus I became a member. That's called the trifecta. A+ for the day for Dana. So no, you cannot do any more tonight. Thank you, Dana. But the rest of you, what are you waiting for?
what we're looking at is what looks like normal, natural behavior that he has reps in and what doesn't. And obviously the way he took care of that ring cam was different than what he was expecting. Or he's just that stupid thinking that thing would work again. And I know people like to jump to, well, if he's that stupid, how come he hasn't been caught yet? Well, doesn't mean just because you haven't been caught doesn't mean you're smart. It just
sounds like Robin Dreek has been listening to my criticisms.
means that what you did was good enough today not to get caught, because there's a lot of really dumb people that have never been caught. Dumb luck plays a lot into these things as well. But because I will never, ever give credit to people that do this type of thing as having high intelligence or high EQ or IQ.
Well, well, there you have it. So Robin Dreek, by default, will say, if you do this, you don't have high intelligence. Which is just, that's black and white thinking. It's perhaps idealistic thinking to think that, but it's just not true. There can be intelligent people that do some dark stuff. I mean, Ted Bundy. I mean, look at people like Sam Vaknin, H.G. Tudor. I mean, they're smart and they're very dark triad. And I mean, Sam Vaknin has a criminal record. So it's certainly not impossible. Now, they might do different kinds of crimes sometimes, might be more white collar crime, but they're still doing crime.
And two, if we look at just B&Es and the amount that take place and the amount that actually gets solved, if this was that gone bad, a good chunk of them never gets solved.
Yep.
And if this was so, in its simplicity, people get away with that shit all the time.
Yep.
The fact that we have a missing person here with it, who could possibly be dead, it makes it a different type of case. Because it doesn't, if she's dead, let's assume she's dead for the sake of the argument. It makes it a different type of case because it wasn't I'm going to go with probably non-intentional homicide here. Something happened. It was not exactly what another homicide case may look like in terms of how they would investigate it, because essentially it's just the caveat here, the one-off here is the fact that there's a body they had to get rid of as well. And if it was as simple as picking her up and taking her out, it's basically a B&E that took a person with them. And if they know to dispose of the person or I don't know, it changes the dynamic. It really, this doesn't fit the traditional B&E route. This doesn't fit the traditional route of a kidnapping. This doesn't fit the traditional route of a homicide, because I think it was never meant to be that. It was meant to be something far simpler, far less involved. And
that's an important one. And people have said this, Rain. People that interviewed Ed Kemper said he was the smartest serial killer they ever spoken to. And IQ of 145. So Robin Dreek would say Ed Kemper's just not intelligent because he did crimes. But it's just clearly not true. It can often be true, but certainly not always true.
This is what we got. And somebody who knows now how not to get caught.
Yeah. Well, if you look at, and I'm seeing all the comments, which is great. And again, I just play the averages of the research, and the research still edges about 60% that this was a solo act, but could there be other people, accomplices involved in that side house? Yeah, there's all kinds of things that could happen in this. But if you look at the intent, I always go back to intent. As I said, John Douglas, first profile in the FBI says, is that you got to look at intent. If the intent in some way was profit, either profiting by taking her and ransoming her, or profit by stealing something, complete failure. That's what I'm talking about. Now, successfully getting away so far, but the intent was a complete failure. And if someone says, because I hear it out there with the conspiracy theorists, the intent was to get back at Nancy, to not Nancy, but Savannah, to make her suffer and all these things. Okay, well, if we look at all the research on that, there is always then some messaging that goes out, especially.
It's almost like Robin Dreek is definitely listening to me, because these are the things that I say explicitly. So he's criticizing me, which is fair play. I've criticized him too.
So think about this. If for some crazy reason that the messaging going into TMZ was anywhere related, not a spear phishing attempt like I think it is and others, then why not put out somewhere in media that, hey, this was because Savannah was X, Y, and Z? And it's not there because it wasn't. There's a profit motive in here in some way. So if people want to believe it was for her abduction, okay, that didn't work. Or for people like me that think it was a B&E that went sideways, still failed. So that's where you always got to go back to what was the intent, where did it fall apart, and what did this guy do well? Well, he hid his identity good enough today to not have that happen.
I think people oftentimes conflate sophisticated with successful. Sometimes simple can be successful. Very simple can be successful, and that might be what we're looking at here. Yeah,
I think so. We've covered so many cases where the simplest answer is usually what happens. The more time that passes and the less information we have, the more we like to fill the gaps with conjecture. And a lot of times the conjecture will spool out of control, and it's easy to cascade. I remember you made such a profound statement a couple of weeks ago when you said it's not a far leap. But when you cascade so many conspiracies on this, and then we think it's this, and then this, the leap from here to here of crazy is so small. But when you then go back down to the grassroots level of what's the intent, the intent is profit, it failed. And what could be the profit? And I'll still entertain both sides, that the main intent was abduction or the main intent was B&E going sideways. Either way, complete failure, except in the fact that he hid his identity well enough to not be found yet.
When we're this far in now, we're going on week 5, and seemingly, at least on the outside, we don't know much. They seem to still be asking the public for any information that they can glean off of it. Do you think we're ever going to figure out who this guy is at this point, or is
Well, it reminds me of that guy's saying, and the saying from the other day was, Ashley Banfield interviewed him, that if you come during the day, they're there for things. If they come at night, they're there for you. And I think that's most likely accurate.
Statistically, there's a lot of these cases that just go nowhere. The fact that we have a microscope on this doesn't necessarily change that fact. It just means more of us are watching. But not getting an answer to things like this, a missing persons case, that's incredibly common. The latter is not.
Yeah, I got two sides of this one too, Tony.
Yeah.
The probability at this point of finding her, it diminishes more and more every day. Again, the research says that we are more and more in the likelihood of not. But, and I know we'll cover this in the next segment, but if you look at the success rate of Pena County Sheriff's Office when it comes to solving homicides or abductions like this, last year they had 12 for 12. They were 100%.
I don't want to. I'd say like this, because I think like this caveats it into those type of a bucket, and I don't think this is the same bucket.
Right, but so we have a missing person that inevitably is going to be in a homicide. I think
Yes.
So when you're looking at strictly homicides, that's where they have what I'm saying by when I say that their success rate of clearance rate, their investigators are really, really good. I think their detectives, and we said this from the beginning too. Even from the very beginning, I kind of dismissed the sheriff to the side because the vibe I was getting from the investigative side seemed pretty spot on. I saw a lot of movement. I saw a lot of things happening at that investigative level that's below the executive level that is the mouthpiece of the organization.
So, by the way, this is Tony Bruschi and Robin Dreek, retired FBI agent. Make sure you check out their channel and support them. Make sure you like this video here. Likes are free, by the way. And likes are for the flock of black sheep in the live chat as well. We're trying to get to at least 1,000. I think I'm a little over the devil's number, 666. So I think we can get there, but we'll see.
And when I did the deep dives this past weekend on it, I was even more impressed than I thought it was going to be by it. So their investigators are some of the best in the country. So if you're looking at national average, the probability is low. But if you're looking at Pena County, the probability is high. And I think this is a key point to make. Also, I really wish they would come out and highlight some of these stats to the public, because you have right now in my mind, we have a two-prong attack going after the perpetrator of this / people who are witting to who did this, that are the ones that could call in a tip and say what this was and solve this thing. All right. In order to do that, you have to compel them to want to. They have to feel unsafe. They have to feel like the noose is closing on them and they're going to go to prison if they don't come forward, something like that. Savannah is doing beautiful messaging. Matter of fact, it's always pretty interesting to me that after we come out on our show of what we think would be a very good method for her to use this empathetic appeal, to give that olive branch to say, hey, things go sideways. You probably didn't mean it to be like this, so that you can draw someone out to want to. But in order for them to want to grab that olive branch, there has to be pressure in another area to force them through. That pressure comes from investigation saying we're getting closer, and then giving data points exactly what they're getting closer on, not the next day the sheriff saying, well, the DNA fell through. Okay. But what you can do is you can roll out stats like I just researched this last weekend and say, hey, listen, the rate of successful investigations of the turnarounds of this, of clearing rates, best in the country. I mean, this county ranks in the top in the country for clearance rates of not this type of crime, but homicides. That puts pressure on.
It does. It does. I think it needs to be caveated, though, with there has been a lot of criticism of his department, a lot of criticism about cutting corners. So I mean, that too. Without doing doing it, and the thing is, that's another rabbit hole too to deep dive into. Is okay. Well, is there criticism of this? Not just for the sake of criticism of like, oh, you're doing a good job, let me tear you down. No, if you're doing a good job, great. But how do you have such a good success rate here and so much noise around you of distrust and hate? There's something else, there's something going on here. And there is a lot of issues within the department. There's a lot of people who have been demoted and they've claimed for political reasons, good investigators, good people who have worked in the department for years, who have contributed to that success rate, no longer in those positions. You have there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of questions, and a lot of questions of cutting corners on some of those very investigations that have the 100% success rate. So I guess the question is, how did you get to point of checking the box of successfully, we've investigated this, we got the right guy. Do we though? I guess, right. And with that would be an interesting one to go down that rabbit hole too. And I think it was like 12. I mean, there's not a ton of homicides here every year in this county. So
I looked at all these numbers. And I even went down to the actual allegations against the sheriff, the internal conflicts.
Sure. Yeah.
I looked at everything. I do. I spent way too much time in this in my life. And actually, to the viewers' comment a few minutes ago, the FBI should have been called in on lead. Actually, they don't have jurisdiction because it's not cross state. It's only if it remains in the state and at the local level if it doesn't have interstate things going on. So it could not be handed off as FBI's primary in situation, because there's not a statute that the FBI could cover on this one. So that answers that question. And it's not saying that you're wrong. It's like, it'd be great, but there's not a mechanism for that. And when it comes to the internal stuff, because I went down this rabbit hole too, Tony. So the internal allegations against the sheriff, those allegations actually, they fall in with the norms of every elected sheriff across the country. There's that is actually pretty normal. Now, I'm not saying that the normal is acceptable. It's normal. The vast majority of them are anonymous. There's been 2 that are only named by person, is actually the deputy and the former one that ran against him. And so those allegations are actually, they're talking about leadership style internally. They're talking about issues. That is a very, very common complaint. It's not, there's in other words, everything internally that they're saying about him is hitting baseline of what typically happens with an elected official in a crime of this case that hits its notoriety. This is not excusing any behavior that we don't like, that we don't think is right. I'm just telling you, it falls within the norms, because I went in, it's always funny, I go into my own confirmation biases of saying, I think we probably have something here. I'm going to look it up, and we'll probably find the smoking gun, and we're going to get great clickbait on it, and we're going to...
Sweet Caroline, long time no see. How are you? She says, thank you very much for the super chat. I disagree with Robin. The person/people who took Nancy are great problem solvers. They haven't been caught. Problem solving is a sign of intelligence. I would tend to agree more with you, Sweet Caroline, than I would Robin Dreek. Seems like Robin Dreek has a bit of a law enforcement bias where criminals must be dumb, but that's just not always the case. And it's not the case because there's a lot of people that are narcissistic, antisocial, that are not dumb as much as people would like them to be. And the world might be a better place if they were, but they're not dumb, and they can cause a lot of damage. So thank you very much for that, Sweet Caroline. Always appreciate your support.
Say this guy's bad because of X, Y, and Z. And you know what happens? Baseline, except on the clearance rate. Now, I'm not crediting the sheriff with the clearance rate. I'm crediting his team with the clearance rate. Now, he's the head of it, so he gets credit for it. But when it comes to it, he's on track. Now, granted, 12 homicides cleared last year. That's not a lot, but for the county his size, it's slightly below the average of other suburban counties across the country. I got all the stats here. There are a few counties that are better. Maricopa County with Joe Arapahoe, Hillsborough County, Wake County Sheriff's Department in Raleigh, Tampa, Dallas, these suburbs, they have slightly above his averages for clearance rates, but not much. All the rest across the country, for the same size of the population, he's above, way above, because the clearance rates on them are roughly 50-60% on the best. Ooh, see what I mean? It's you just keep going down the rabbit hole, because that way, what I'm hoping to do in this is kind of clear the calm the noise and let them do their job, and then elect someone else if you don't like him next time. Because is he dislikable? Yes. Does he do things does his image contrast to what we expect and want him to do? Do we want him to go in basketball games or go into the gym the next morning where people can see that he's out and about just living life normally when there's a big investigation on? No. Because he doesn't have that kind of self-awareness that he shouldn't be doing that kind of shit, but he was. But is it affecting the investigation? I don't think it did.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of truth.
It from him was less than the capacity of a mid-sized concert venue. And
while Tony Bruschi does his interruptions for subscribing to the channel, I will do the same. Please make sure you like the video. Likes are free. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. And memberships are a great way to support the channel. I'm going to start doing members only live streams. Just got to coordinate some times to do that. And thank you very much for all the support I've gotten so far.
Board of Supervisors has now requested outside investigations into his conduct twice. His own deputies voted no confidence. He put his political opponents on administrative leave weeks before the election in a move that even fellow Democrats called election interference. And now he's the face of the most high-profile missing person investigation in the country, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. And the criticism has gone from local grumbling to national scrutiny. So, with all of that, with the documented complaints and the razor-thin mandate and the investigations and the national spotlight, what can actually be done to remove him? It's a question a lot of people are throwing around. The answer is the part that should genuinely concern people. Not just in Pima County, everywhere in Arizona, really everywhere throughout our country, because the answer functionally is almost nothing. An elected sheriff in Arizona occupies one of the most insulated positions in American government, and the levers that people assume exist, the ones they talk about on social media, the ones they demand their supervisors pull, either don't work or the way people think or don't exist at all. We're going to get into why that is, and why Nanos is seemingly being able to operate the way he is, really without consequence. Don't like me? Too bad. You can't get rid of me. Disagree with me? I don't care. You can't get rid of me. Can I just say a bunch of crazy random shit out there and contradict myself left and right? Maybe not really give anybody confidence in this investigation. In fact, make everybody feel far less confident. Don't care. Doesn't matter. Can't get rid of me. That's what's going on. That's the reality of this.
That reminds me, Cat Williams used to make fun of Steve Harvey and call him Mr. Potato Head.
Situation. It is. Give me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube and on our Substack. I'm going to go through and explain this in greater detail so you fully understand. Press subscribe while we're doing it. To understand why, you have to understand what a sheriff actually is under Arizona law. And it's not what most people assume. Under the Arizona Constitution, Article 12, Section 3, the sheriff is constitutionally created, independently elected officer. That's what he is, not appointed by the Board of Supervisors, not subordinate to the Board of Supervisors, not answerable to the governor. The sheriff is elected directly by the voters of the county and holds that office in an independent constitutional officer.
This is true from Tony Bruschi. The Sheriff Nanos was elected. But some of my favorite Cat Williams quotes are, "Winners cannot allow losers to rewrite history." Another good one is, "To be confident without being delusional is a real skill." And then another one is, "Your first job once you have sold your soul is to act like you didn't do it." So those three I remember from that Club Shay Shay interview. They're pretty good.
For a 4-year term. The Board of Supervisors and the sheriff are, legally speaking, co-equal. The board controls the budget. That's their leverage. They can fund or defund. They can publicly criticize. They can pass resolutions expressing their displeasure, but they cannot fire the sheriff. They cannot suspend the sheriff.
Oh, and my other favorite from Cat Williams is, "There ain't no such thing as someone who's not afraid, but there's people that know that being afraid in no way stops you from doing what you got to do."
They cannot override his operational decisions or tell him how to run an investigation or go pound sand. This was reinforced just last year. In 2025, the Arizona Supreme Court ruled that in Sanchez v. Maricopa County, that a county cannot remove a sheriff from office absent specified constitutional circumstances unrelated to the exercise of law enforcement authority. The court went way out of its way to say that the relationship between a board of supervisors and a sheriff is not hierarchical. These are not employer and employee. These are parallel elected officials with separate constitutional mandates. So when people say the board of supervisors should do something about Nanos, the board has essentially done everything it legally can. It's requested investigations twice. It publicly called him out after the Lappin suspension. It sought outside review from both the Arizona Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney. These are the tools. That's the whole toolbox right there. And once you sent those letters and made those votes, you're done. So what about the mechanisms that theoretically exist beyond the board that 7 of you are screaming at me right now saying, what about this? Well, there's 3. Yeah, let's talk about those 3. And each one is either functionally impossible, legally inapplicable, or already been tried. The first is the recall election. Arizona Constitution, Article 8, Part 1 provides that any elected official can be recalled by the voters. The mechanism is real. It's in the Constitution. People point to it like it's a fire alarm that you just kind of pull and it works. It's not. It's more like assembling a fire truck from scratch in a burning building. Here's the math. To trigger a recall election for the Pima County Sheriff, petitioners need valid signatures equal to 25% of the total votes cast in the last general election for that office. In 2024, approximately 487,301 votes were cast in the sheriff's race. 25% of that is roughly 121,825 valid, verified signatures. You have 120 days to collect them. Go! It's just over 1,000 verified signatures per day, every single day, for 4 months straight. And that's the number you need to survive verification, not the number you need to collect. Signatures get thrown out for bad addresses, illegible handwriting.
By the way, this is a job I used to do. We used to collect petition signatures for political candidates in Pennsylvania. It's an interesting job, right? You get people to sign for them. You go to their heart. So if you're a registered Republican, you got to vote. You can sign for Republican candidates. If you're a registered Democrat, you can sign for Democrat candidates, at least in Pennsylvania. But it's an interesting job. And Tony's explaining here, this is what Sheriff Nanos has to do too. Even Trump, even the president needs signatures. People don't think about that, but they do.
People who aren't registered in the right district, circulator errors, missing dates. In any real-world petition drive, you plan on a rejection rate. Realistically, to land on 121,825 clean signatures, you need to collect somewhere in the range of 140,000 to 150,000 raw signatures. That requires an organized, funded, sustained grassroots infrastructure operating across a county that stretches over 9,000 square miles with a population nearing 1 million people. For context, the most famous recall effort in Arizona history targeted Governor Evan Mecham in 1987. That was a statewide effort with a massive institutional support, widespread media coverage, and bipartisan outrage over canceling Martin Luther King Day. It succeeded. The Mecham was impeached before the recall election took place. A county-level recall of a sheriff in a county where the electorate is split almost perfectly down the middle with no institutional machinery already in place, that's a near impossibility under current conditions. And even if it somehow succeeded, even if every signature held up and the recall election was called, Nanos would appear on the ballot as a candidate. Other candidates could file to run against him. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Nanos could win his own recall election, and if he does, no further recall petition can be filed against him for the remainder of his term unless the petitioners reimburse the county for the full cost of the prior recall election. So the recall exists on paper. In practice, it's a mechanism designed for a level of civic mobilization that almost never materializes. So there's that. You're like, whoa, okay, so that one's not going to work. The second lever is criminal prosecution. If an elected official is convicted of a felony, That's a path to removal. And this is the one people have been banking on. Whether they realize it or not, the Board of Supervisors has twice asked outside agencies to investigate Nanos. The first time was in 23 over his handling of the Ricky Garcia sexual assault case, a situation where a sergeant in his department was accused of essaying a fellow deputy, and Nanos allegedly put the internal investigation on hold. Supervisors voted 3-2 to request an Arizona Attorney General, or DPS, to investigate. Attorney General Chris Mays accepted that referral. Her office conducted the investigation. The result, no criminal wrongdoing found. Case closed. The second time was in November of 24 after Nanos placed Lappin on administrative leave and suspended the head of the deputies union in the final weeks of the election. Supervisors voted unanimously to request both the Arizona AG and the U.S. Attorney investigate whether those actions constituted criminal conduct or election interference. The AG's office acknowledged the request. Beyond that, silence. No charges have been filed. No public update has been issued. If charges were to materialize, they'd require a trial, which could take months or years, and a conviction, which requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The bar isn't just high, it's prosecutorial, not political. Bad judgment, public embarrassment, operational failures, thin-skinned press conferences, even conduct that looks retaliatory, none of that is automatically criminal. And 2 investigations have now either closed without charges or stalled without public action. So there's your other one. What about the third lever, you ask? What's behind door number 3? Well, it's a brand new car. A third lever is the one that gets thrown around the most on social media and in comment sections, and it is the one that flat out does not apply. Impeachment. People hear the word and assume it works like it does on a federal level, that some legislative body can bring charges and remove the official. In Arizona, impeachment exists under Article 8, Part 2 of the state constitution. It applies to the governor and other state and judicial officers, except justices of courts not of record. That language matters. A county sheriff is not a state officer. The sheriff is a county officer, created by Article 12 of the Constitution, elected by county voters operating under county jurisdiction. The Arizona House of Representatives cannot impeach a county sheriff. The Arizona Senate cannot try a county sheriff. There is no version of Arizona impeachment law that reaches county-level elected officials. It's not a matter of political will. It's not a matter of votes. The constitutional authority does not exist. You could get every single member of the Arizona legislature to agree that a county sheriff should be removed, and they would have no legal mechanism to do it. Impeachment is off the table. Not difficult, not unlikely, just legally impossible. And this is where the frustration needs to shift from the specific of the systematic or the systemic here, because this isn't really about Chris Nanos. It's about a structural gap in democratic accountability that's been baked into Arizona's government since 1912, the year the Titanic sunk. Arizona's constitution was written by people who were deeply skeptical of concentrated government power.
Thank you, Rooster. Thank you, Sweet Caroline. Come on, folks. Let's please show our gratitude for this amazing channel. Please demonstrate your gratitude by hitting the like button. I like that phrasing, Sweet Caroline. Demonstrate your gratitude, because gratitude is an action word, and likes are free. So thank you very much for that, Sweet Caroline. Subscribing is free too.
It was one of the most progressive populist state constitutions of its era. Direct democracy tools like recall, initiative, and referendum were embedded into the foundation specifically because the framers didn't trust appointed officials, didn't trust backroom deals, and wanted the voters to have the final say. That instinct was admirable. The unintended consequences is that between elections, there's almost no meaningful check on an independently elected county officer. The sheriff answers to the voters every 4 years. Between those elections, the only realistic mechanism is a recall that requires a mobilization effort most communities simply cannot execute. A criminal prosecution that requires conduct rising to the level of a felony, or an impeachment process that constitutionally cannot touch them. The system that was designed to protect elected officials from political interference also protects them from accountability. Those two things aren't the same, but the Constitution treats them like they are. So where does that leave Pima County right now? Well, Nanos won't face voters again until 2028. His current term runs through January 29. A recall would require an unprecedented signature-gathering operation in a politically divided county with no existing infrastructure to support it. The AG investigations have either produced nothing or gone quiet. The Board of Supervisors has used every tool it has, and the Guthrie case has put the Sheriff's Department under a level of national scrutiny that Nanos himself has admitted he is not used to. He said publicly that he's not accustomed to people hanging on his every word and holding him accountable for what he says. I mean, that's the craziest line, I think, of this whole damn thing. Not used to being people holding him accountable for what he says. That's the job. Being accountable for what you say.
Yeah, that was a bit of a mask clip moment by Sheriff Nanos, right? I'm not used to people hanging on my every word. It's like, well, you probably should be, considering you're the sheriff.
Say and following through. Sorry, it's a key element of it, and you're not well, get used to it. I don't know what else to tell you. You're not used to it. It's a remarkable thing for an elected law enforcement official to say out loud. The honest answer, the one that isn't satisfying but is the truth, is that barring a criminal indictment that nobody currently sees coming, Chris Nanos serves as Pima County Sheriff until the voters decide otherwise. That is the system. The people who wrote Arizona's Constitution.
And I wonder what the local people think right now. The people locally in Pima County, Arizona, do they think Sheriff Nanos is doing a good job? I'd be curious what they think. I wonder if they're going to be a little bit protective / defensive of local law enforcement because they live locally. I don't know. What do you think, chat? Do you think the people locally there, they're on Sheriff Nanos' side? Or do you think, no, they actually think, nah, he's not been doing too good. And the first chance we get to vote him out, we will. So press 1 if you think the local residents are for Sheriff Nanos still. Press 2 if you think they'll try to vote him out the first second they can.
Wanted to make sure the government couldn't remove an official the people chose. So the people got what they voted for. Like it or not. What they apparently never considered is what happens when the people want to remove that official too and find out they can't. So hopefully that answers some of your questions about why you can't just up and out Nanos. Give me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube or our Substack. The links are in the description. Substack, check that out.
So most people think that they want Sheriff Nanos out. And I could see that. I could definitely see that being the case. Especially since Nancy's not found. Especially since there's been no arrests. And it just doesn't seem like they're that close. People are grasping at straws, but I'll give you my things I'm hanging my hat on. If there could be footage got from the other Nest Cam footage in Nancy's home, that would be huge. Even though we don't know where that footage is and if we can even get it. But if they could, that would be huge. Maybe if they find something on a traffic cam, but even that would be difficult because how are you going to see that person? How are you going to see the person at the front door if their mask is off, if they're not in that garb? So maybe I'll say that. And then what else? the DNA in the home? Are they going to be able to use genetic genealogy from the DNA in the home? I'm not really too convinced they will be able to because it's a mixed sample. So, and again, it could be anyone, and we don't know what kind of DNA it was either. We don't know if it was touch DNA or something better. I presume it's touch DNA. So we'll have to see. Exactly, sweet Caroline. We will have to see, because there's also things that we probably don't know either. Now, the tower dump, that would be interesting too. I'd like to hear what that has to say. But again, if they didn't bring any cell phones with them and they never messaged about it via text, what are they going to find? I don't think they're going to find anything. Hot tea, what's shaking? Hasn't been here. Yes, this is true, Hot tea, but he still was able to get voted in. The rest of the experienced deputies and law enforcement, they were not happy about it. But somehow he was able to get the people. And honestly, it might have just been a political thing, right? Where whether he has an R or D next to his name, I think he's got a D next to his name. So there's many people that are a D in Arizona that would say, nope, no matter what, I'm not voting for a Republican. And it could also be vice versa too, right? Depending on the county. That could explain a lot of it, honestly. Couldn't hurt there, Rittenhouse, to get those sensors. Couldn't hurt. You actually have to give these kidnappers some sort of weird credit. They haven't been caught yet, so they're not stupid. I mean, I agree. They're not as stupid as some people would have thought. Tucson is a liberal island. So that's probably why Democrats would support them, and maybe Republicans would not want to, right? No, Sheriff Nanos did not run unopposed. He won by less than 500 votes. There was an automatic revote or recount that was triggered. Sergeant Cross, the union leader that Brian Etten has spoken to multiple times, he mentioned that. Meet Quack the Rooster and George will keep bumping into the tree. She's talking about George of the Jungle. Watch out for that tree. My dad used to always say that. See, OC girls sober as a judge. That's right. Dog would always catch the criminal by the end of the episode. All he needs is 30 minutes and he'd find the person that took her. And then he'd hand him a cigarette and say, you effed up, didn't you? And then he'd show him a picture of his kids and say, see, we need to find you to get these, so these kids have food on the table. Very true, Lynette. It was an automatic recount. Thank you, George. Remember to like the video out there. Likes are tax-free. Get your hitting the like button reps in. Doesn't cost a thing. Sort of like Jennifer Lopez's love. And it really helps the channel. The mayor in September told police it was okay to enforce the law. Kind of weird. That was according to the minivan Lee who lives there. What did Improve Yourself say? I've been hearing that Improve Yourself, but I couldn't find any evidence of it. What were her radical posts on Facebook? I looked them up and they said there was no evidence of it. Oh, that was the influencer, James. That was the person that used to be some sort of like porn star or OnlyFans model or something. That's a shame, Ms. Wilder. Now, we were talking about Dog. I was like, Dog the bounty hunter only needs 30 minutes to solve the case. Every episode, he always caught the man or woman. Right, so Underdog, there's probably a lot of people that, even though it shouldn't matter as much in local law enforcement, there's a lot of people that just vote straight D, straight R, period. There's always a delay, so I don't know what people are laughing at when there's a delay. My Jennifer Lopez quote, or Dog the bounty hunter always finding someone by the end of the episode. Yes, the person who hires the detective should always remain on the suspect list, according to the girl with the dragon tattoo. If you've ever seen that movie. Good movie, by the way. I was reminded of it the other day because there is this woman that killed her, the person that she alleged S8'd her. And I was like, oh, that's what the girl in the dragon tattoo did. Except she didn't kill him. She tattooed the words "grapist" on his chest. Good movie, though. I like that movie. But James Bond was in the movie. Rooster says, Dog by himself couldn't chase a parked car. That's a good one. Starting to feel more like a Charlie Kirk case to me. Well, give it long enough, and the theories will start flying. And it didn't even take that long with Charlie Kirk, even though they said they found somebody. But again, that'll be an interesting trial, right? Because so many people are convinced, no, it wasn't him. But we'll see the evidence the prosecution brings. And that's going to be something Candace Owens, no doubt. She's going to be on that like white on rice. Yeah, I mean, we've heard every theory of this, every theory of Charlie Kirk. And to think, they have someone arrested already. And that's why Candace would have to be careful, right? She doesn't want to be the TikTok person. But she covers her tracks, right? She doesn't make direct accusations. She keeps it vague enough. Or if you watch the first episode of her Bride of Charlie series, she read a whole blurb about someone calling Erica Kirk a psychopath. But notice it wasn't Candace Owens' words. It was the person she was reading. So that's a lawsuit defense is basically what she did. Which one, Dana? Charlie Kirk shooter? I very well might when it starts. Yes, Miss Kim, I agree with you. It is bedtime. You have a great night, Miss Kim. Thanks for joining us. Sarah, you as well. Cat, time for her cat nap. This is true, Jolly. This is true. I mean, some people were trying to say to me in the very beginning, Charlie's still alive. He's on a desert island somewhere. He's still alive. Candace talked to him when she met with Erica Kirk, and that's why she was okay. It's like, no, he's gone. He is not alive. Good night, Jolly. OC girl, good night. Kat, good night. Sarah, good night. George, good night. Hot tea, good night. Oh, is she now? Hot tea? That's ridiculous. Candace is saying Erica is trans. Is that was like a new thing in her Bride of Charlie series? That's absurd. You have a good night, Brenda. And Karen, you're absolutely correct. Now, see, like Candace Owens to me, she's right about some things, but she goes off the rocker to me in other ways too. We'll go over it. We'll go over it. But all right, everybody, make sure you like the video on your way out. Likes are tax-free and really help the channel. Get your like button reps and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And thank you very much for all of your support. All the likes, subscriptions, super chats, super stickers, memberships. I'm very grateful for it all. And remember, gratitude is an action word. So you demonstrate your gratitude. Yeah, Tim, I will. I have done that. In fact, Tim, if it wasn't for Candace Owens, you wouldn't see me doing this right now. My very first popular live stream was the very day that Candace Owens did her meeting with Erica Kirk. It was the next day, I guess, or the first live stream Candace did. And I broke it down. And I broke it down. And that was the first one that kind of blew up. And things have been rocking and rolling since then. So, in a way, you know it, Jolly. So, that really helped. Yeah, we're losing an hour, Ms. Wild. Good old Sadia Khan. You got to watch out for her. I don't trust her as far as I can throw her. But it's funny how things work, right? Candace helped me to get here. But all right, everybody. Have a great night. And I'll be back again tomorrow night.